All right, we're going to get started here. If everybody can take a seat and enjoy the evening. Welcome to the May 14th, 2024 Development Review Commission hearing. The Development Review Commission is created to hold public meetings and hearings to provide analysis and recommendations to the City Council regarding general land use policies and applications where the Commission has recommendatory power, and to render final decisions on specified applications where the Commission has final decision-making power, including but not limited to all aspects of a proposed and future development. The Development Review Commission recognizes the creation of a desirable environment throughout the city for residents, businesses, and industry is a prime requisite for the interdependence of land values, aesthetics, and good site planning by promoting harmonious, safe, attractive, and compatible development that is therefore considered to be in the best interest of public health, safety, and general welfare. Any person aggrieved by a final decision of the Development Review Commission may file an appeal to the City Council within 14 calendar days after the Development Review Commission has rendered its decision. Development Review Commission recommendations to City Council are not final decisions. With us tonight on the commission, we have on my right, Commissioner Larry Tom, Don Casano, Vice Chair Michelle Schwartz. To my left, Commissioner Joe Forte, Linda Spears, and Barbara Lloyd. With us from staff are Jeff Tamilevich, Ryan Levake, I was just checking to see, Michelle Dalkey, Diana Kaminsky, Jacob Payne, Chris Jasper, Lily Drosos, Joanna Berry, and Jason Wolf. During the public portion of our hearing, any members of the public that wish to speak will need to fill out one of these white cards. They can be found up here at the front. If there's anything that you wish to speak on, fill out one of those and you'll be given up to 3 minutes to speak. Staff will be monitoring the time. For those that are online, please note that the WebEx chat box is not monitored or moderated. Okay, with that, we are going to review the Development Review Commission agenda for the evening. The first item is the consideration of our meeting minutes. Then I will review a consent agenda, and then we will hear the other items that are not on the consent agenda. I will review the consent agenda after we do the study session regular meeting minute approval. So with that, could I get a motion for the commission study session and regular meeting minutes? Commissioner Casano?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to approve the Development Review Commission study session of April 9th, 2024, and the regular meeting of April 9th, 2024.
Okay, the motion is set by Commissioner Casano. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Tom. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, that's okay. Yes. And that passes unanimously. Okay, next up is our consent agenda. If there's anyone from the public wishing to speak on one of these items, please get my attention as I call them off. First item on our consent agenda is item number 2, Sam's Club Tempe Marketplace. Was there anyone wishing to speak on that? Okay, item number 3 is Warner and Hardy. Okay, item number 4 is AME Electrical Contracting Office. Okay, we'll keep that. Item number 5 is Chick-fil-A. One note on Chick-fil-A is we will be approving that through consent. However, we will revise the condition of approval related to the hours of operation, adjusting that from the closing time from 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. Item number 6, Golden Feet Reflexology. Item number 7, Filiberto's. And then item number 9, Sterling Tempe. Okay, seeing none, those all will remain on our consent agenda. Can I get a motion for our consent agenda? Commissioner Forte?
I motion for the approval of the consent agenda.
Okay, is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Casano. All those in favor? Raise your hand. Okay, and that passes unanimously. Okay, moving along, and we'll let some of these folks clear out here. Thank you, those that were on the consent agenda, for coming tonight. Item number 8, Tempe Gateway. I'd like to invite the applicant for Tempe Gateway to the podium. Hello. Good evening.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Wendy Riddell with the law firm Barry Riddell. 6750 East Camelback. My pleasure to be here this evening on behalf of Coleridge, and he is pulling up the presentation for me. Perfect. So we're here this evening on behalf of Tempe Gateway. It's the northwest corner of Scottdale Road and McKellips Road. There has been, particularly in the last 48 hours, quite a bit of misinformation that has been circulated out to the community. So I did want to start and correct that misinformation. The first is we are not here seeking a general plan amendment. In fact, what we are proposing is entirely consistent with the recently voter-adopted general plan. We are also not kicking people out of their homes. Construction here at soonest would not begin until 2028 for phase 1. I will explain in the presentation how it's a 3-phased project, and we anticipate a minimum of 3 years between each of those phases. And we've been working with people to be able to move them, have a relocation plan that would help move them between phases, or frankly to another site that my client has up the road. And there will be a minimum 1-year notice prior to construction. None of that has occurred yet either. Again, much process still in front of us. So the request that is before you this evening, it's a request to rezone this site from R3 and R4 to MU4. It's a PAD to establish development standards, of course, a development plan review for this mixed-use project. And again, no general plan amendment is being sought. That is because, you can tell I'm hammering this point home, but we've seen quite a bit of email traffic. This is again consistent with the recently approved general plan, which calls for this site to be 65 dwelling units per acre, and of course our project complies with that. A little bit about the details. As I mentioned, this is a 3-phase project over 17.22 net acres. It is a maximum of 5 stories in height. We're seeking 75 feet height, but really, and I will explain this in a later graphic, the perceived height really will be 55 feet, just a matter of how Tempe actually measures the height. There's 910 new residential units that will be coming with this. We'll have a mix of studio, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom. And then there's also quite a bit of commercial space that will be coming along Scottdale Road, 24,000 square feet, that we see being a mix of retail, bodega, restaurant type of uses. Lot coverage is 57%. We've got a 25% landscaped area. We are proposing 1,625 parking spaces, roughly a ratio of 1.78 per unit, and 901 bicycle spaces. We will be and are proposing a minimum of 50 EV spaces. And then of course you'll see the setbacks as well around the project. We also have worked carefully in this project on the height to make sure that there's lots of places where it actually steps down and you get a lot of variation between the 5 stories, 4 stories, 3 stories, and 2 stories. My lovely Easter egg colored exhibit here will explain to you where you can see the height, and the height is closer towards McKellips and Scottdale Road, tapering then down to 4 stories, 3 stories, and 2 stories. We also wanted to show from the street, from Papago Drive to the north, kind of a cross section of what that would look like from the residential, where you have the alley, you've got the landscaping, the fire lane, and then how that kind of tapered height works in relationship to the single family to our north. This is an exhibit we shared with that community, of course, as well. This gives you an idea what it looks like on the other side of the project when you're headed east on McKellips. You can see the relationship between McKellips, the project, and of course some of the residential across the road as well, and McAllister Avenue if you were to take a sharp left there. So when I talked about perceived height, the reality is the perceived height will be 55 feet along McKellips. There is about 10 feet of drop across this entire site at 17 acres. So as a result, we are seeking that higher 75 because of how Tempe and where Tempe measures height really comes in about 70, but I think the reality is if you're looking at the distance between the ground and the top of the building, it will come in at that 55. And then our landscape plan, it shows you how we've broken up the massing, how you've got these landscaped courtyards where you will have some sport courts and some pools and some amenity spaces, as well as ways to get light into the individual units. We work very closely with staff, as the staff report tells you, in changing out tree species and making sure what we're proposing was consistent with their desires there. This gives you an idea of the phasing plan. So phase 1, of course, would occur closest to Scottdale Road. Phase 2 would be that middle component, and phase 3 is the yellow component closer to McAllister. We do anticipate constructing this, leaving the other phase 2 and phase 3 operating as it currently is operating. And then eventually, as phase 1 is stabilized, moving on to phase 2, and then ultimately to phase 3 as well. So ultimately, we're looking at least a 10-year build-out for the project overall. To give you an idea of what that looks like from the corner of Scottdale Road and McKellips, you can see that commercial space. You get a sense of what that looks like as it's integrated with the residential as well. Off of McKellips, to give you an idea of what that looks like. If you were driving along McKellips, you can see the changes in elevations, you can see the changes in material, lots of sense of movement throughout. Shows you how phase 1 would look, how phases 1 and 2 would look, and then ultimately, when you add in phase 3, seeing how it tapers down to McAllister Avenue. This area will also be very well amenitized. We've got barbecues, bike parking, quite a bit of bike parking, swimming pools, shade structures, club rooms, business centers, fitness center, dog park, sports cart, all the types of things you would expect to see with a quality market rate project such as the one we're proposing. The materials, I do have the architects here as well. They're from Davis. They're happy to come up if you'd like further discussion about some of the materials we're proposing. And the colors. And then I did want to share with you, we've done an extensive amount of outreach on this proposal. We started by meeting with the North Tempe Neighborhood Association. I believe some residents are here this evening. We've met with the Cavalier Estates neighborhood. We have done door-to-door outreach within 600 plus feet. We have done tenant notification emails. We had a separate tenant meeting for the folks that are on site. And then of course we had a neighborhood meeting, and we're continuing to have ongoing follow-up discussions, frankly, with all the folks that will have us. So with that, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, we would respectfully request your approval, subject to staff stipulations, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions now for the applicant? Commissioner Spears?
Just regarding Tempe's initiative looking at affordable housing and trying to increase the housing stock, have you discussed with your client the possibility of including affordable housing component within this development, not all market rate?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Spears, we have discussed that. I think we are more likely here to be contributing to Hometown for All and keeping this particular project market rate. We feel like in North Tempe that there is a need for more market rate there. There's a need for all of it, of course, but the idea here would be to contribute to Hometown for All.
Any other questions at the moment? Commissioner Floyd, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Two questions. Can you speak to, I know you spoke about the phases, how do you handle that with the parking garage over those 3 phases? And then, just trying to remember my other question here. Well, why don't you answer that one while I remember my second question?
Well, and Mr. Chair, Commissioner Lloyd, I'm going to invite the architect to come up and answer how we'll handle the phasing of the garages. I think he's probably
Okay, and I remembered my second question. So you have 930 units?
910.
910. How many are you displacing currently? Like how many units currently
In
exist?
fact, I was asking that very question as we walked up on site. Do you know the total unit count that's there?
I don't.
I will get you that answer. I'll let you speak to the garages.
Good evening, Mike Edwards with Davis. I believe the question was
How many units currently exist versus the 910 that you're going to build? And then can you talk about how you'll construct the garage as it relates to the phasing?
So 471 units currently exist over the entire property.
and then the garage is a precast parking structure. You've seen probably the wrap type product. They'll build that section of the garage for phase one and then do the wrap around it. And then it was in one of those images. We will do an architectural screening of you, if you will, of that western end of the parking garage until phase two comes online. So it kind of builds in a sequence from east to west. So I don't know if that answers your question, but.
So the garage was also built in phases then?
Yes.
Correct, yes.
Any other questions? I do have a question. So could you discuss, and I maybe we'll probably have a graphic up, but the circulation for the parking garage?
Don't go anywhere, Mike. Would it be possible to pull the presentation back up?
Do you have the phasing plans?
I do.
And I'm more focused on how you get in and out from the main roads and.
Yeah, if you
I think that's probably the best one.
Yeah, am I able to point?
Well, I don't think they can see that though. No.
Phase one parking structure is accessed from the northeast corner off of Scottdale Road. I don't know if you can see that road coming in off of Scottdale heading west, and then it turns south and goes into that portion of the garage that will be built in that magenta color area. And then it's a park-on ramp that circulates within that. And then when phase two is built, excuse me, that garage again will be continued to the west and tie into that existing phase one garage. And so you circulate within that garage, and then we will be able to come in from McKellips and enter the the west end of that garage. And then-
McAllister or McKellips?
McKellips for phase
McKellips.
two.
And I wish I could point, but
Oh,
you can
okay.
see
I
you can
see it,
see a
yes.
drive coming in off of McKellips.
No,
Yeah.
doesn't work.
And then when phase three is built, it ties in. So there's two access points, one coming in phase one, and then one from the north, and then one coming in from the south.
And the road on the north, or is that, okay, that's Grass Creek Fire Line, okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
from phase one heading west, that becomes just Grass Creek Fire Lane.
Okay. Okay, Commissioner Tom?
Do you know the unit count for each phase?
I know the total unit count by phase.
Let's see, got it here somewhere.
So here's the total.
Yeah, let me find it here. I had it somewhere, hold on.
The answer is yes, but bear with us for one quick moment. It's
Yes.
a lot of numbers.
All right, let's see here. So phase one is 232 units, and then 280 units are added during phase two, and then 398 at phase three for a total of 910.
When you can,
that
did
correct?
you want the breakout of types or? We do. So,
Yes. All right, in phase one, we have 12 studios, 89 one-bedrooms, 102
two bedrooms.
two-bedrooms, and then 29 three-bedrooms. And then in phase two, we have 18 studios, 72 one-bedroom, 158 two-bedroom, and 32 three-bedroom. And then in phase three, we have 12 studio, 204 one-bedroom, 152 two-bedroom, and 33 bedroom. And then the total is 42 studio.
Oh, the total's actually on the screen here.
Yeah. Hey, look, it matches mine.
Always comforting when that happens.
Commissioner Casano?
Question, you talked about phasing and not starting until 2028, am I correct?
So if you go, let me go back here.
Yeah, that was part of the, yeah,
So construction on the first phase won't begin until 2028.
right.
And it would be, after stabilization, an additional 3 years before we would even start phase two. Once phase two is stabilized again, at least an additional 3 years, we would start phase three.
So 3 years between each phase, so you're like, 9 years, 9 years.
Yeah,
10 years.
I mean, it's likely a 10-year build-out.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was
Commissioner
a
Schwartz?
similar question. Can you explain the reasoning of coming for approval now and starting construction in 2028?
I mean, ultimately, it takes quite a bit of time to get through the overall process, and then we want to be able to work through the residents on site and provide alternatives and give them ample notice. So it's trying to be responsive to the community.
Thank you.
Another quick question based on follow-up. Yeah, you're developing the plan for notifying people and helping them relocate? That is not finalized yet.
Chairman Johnson, Commissioner Casano, we do have a relocation plan. That's when we met with the residents, we shared with them, trying to work with them to help define new location. And again, recognizing there's plenty of time, and the idea would be if there's folks from that first phase, we would then perhaps be able to relocate them in the second phase, and then the second phase into the third phase, or to one of our other projects, which is up at Miller and Roosevelt, to help them as well. So we have been working with these folks to help them through relocation, but it's not imminent, is my point.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. We'll call you back up. Now it's time to hear from staff, so Ms. Drosos.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. I'll state my name for the record, Lily Drosos, Planner 2 with the City of Tempe Community Development Department. The site is located at the northwest corner of Scottdale and McKellips Roads and consists of 4 parcels within the R3 and R4 multifamily zoning districts. The applicant is requesting a zoning map amendment from R3, R4 to MU4, a planned area development overlay to establish development standards, and a development plan review for a new 5-story mixed-use development consisting of 910 dwelling units and commercial uses on 17.22 net acres. This is a redevelopment of an existing apartment complex consisting of the 3 phases. The zoning map amendment from R3, R4 to MU4 zoning conforms with the projected land use and residential density defined in the General Plan 2050, which is mixed use, high density up to 65 dwelling units per acre. Here is the comparison table for the R3, R4 districts compared to the development standard proposed by the PAD overlay. The PAD requests an increase in residential density from 20 and 25 dwelling units per acre to 53 dwelling units per acre. The PAD also requests an increase in the building height standard from 30 feet and 40 feet to 75 feet and maximum lot coverage of 57%. And lastly, a reduction in parking standards as 2016 parking spaces are required by the Zoning and Development Code and 1,625 spaces are provided. This is the site plan. The site is, as previously mentioned, 17.22 acres, and there is 1 driveway entrance along McKellips Road, 1 along McAllister Avenue, and 2 along Scottdale Road. There are access control gates to secure entry into the parking garage. The parking structure is 5 levels with vehicle and pedestrian entrances on both the north and south side. Along the Scottdale Road frontage, there is surface parking available for patrons of the businesses. In total, 1,625 parking spaces with 910 bicycle parking spaces. The project proposes approximately 24,000 square feet of commercial uses on site in a mix of studio, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units, and then in a mixture of 2, 3, 4, and 5-story buildings. The development is proposed in the 3 phases and features 12 landscape courtyard areas with turf, seating, recreation areas, as well as a fitness center, community clubhouse, and 3 pools. The landscape plan includes a total on-site landscape area of 27%, which totals 207,613 square feet. The plant palette includes 15 trees and 27 shrubs and ground cover and 26 cacti and accents. A large variety of large trees such as Texas ebony and blue palo verde are provided along the Scottdale Road frontage. The parking lot landscape islands provide Desert Museum Palo Verde. Cathedral oak are utilized along the north property line for within that 6-foot required land use buffer adjacent to single family. The date palms are another accent tree that are spread throughout the site and in the courtyard areas. Other tree species that are used are mulga acacia, shoestring acacia, palo blanco, desert willow purple, bay laurel, ironwood, massive tree, thornless mesquite, and Texas mountain laurel. The proposed building height is 69 feet and 9 inches from grade to top of parapet, and from grade, the height of the 2nd floor is 20 feet 9 inches, 3rd floor is 31 feet and 9 inches, and 4th floor is 42 feet and 9 inches. 5th floor is 53 feet and 9 inches. The ground floor commercial uses are located along the east elevation along Scottdale Road. The fitness center and leasing office are located on the ground floor along McKellips Road by the driveway entrance. Another fitness center and a clubhouse room with a roof terrace are displayed on the 5th floor. The project features a mix of materials including honed CMU, faux wood fins, wood siding and accents, modular thin brick, painted plaster ephes broken up by metal panels with relief patterns, and insulated glazing. Okay, here are the, oh, that was the Scottsdale. Here are the north-facing elevations. You can see the building steps down to 2 and 3 stories adjacent to the single-family residences to the north. Here are the west elevations facing McAllister Avenue. And again, you can see the building steps down to 2 and 3 stories adjacent to the single-family residence to the west. These are the courtyard elevations. And again, we have the renderings. This is Scottdale Road and McKellips Road at the retail corner, and then McKellips Road frontage, the western frontage facing McAllister, and phase 1 and 2. And here's a material board. This is a breakdown of the proposed parking ratio per PAD by unit type. So you can see 1 space per unit, 1.1 space per unit for 1 bedroom, 2 for 2 bedroom, and 2 for 3 bedroom, and then 0.1 space per unit for guest parking. And then the zoning code requires 2016, and the applicant is requesting relief from that per the PAD for 1,625 parking spaces. A neighborhood meeting was held December 13th, and community development staff was in attendance. There were approximately 34 members of the public present at that meeting. Staff received, this has been updated, but 29 calls, 29 emails and 2 calls as of the making of this PowerPoint. We did receive a few more comment cards leading up to 4 p.m. in opposition for the request. Some concerns were related to building height, parking, density, affordability of the units, or the relocation plan of the existing tenants, and site-light impacts from the single-family residences. And then additional comments that came in were regarding the landscaping and losing trees along McKellips Road. Staff is recommending approval because the project meets the general plan projected land use and residential density for the site. The project will meet the development standards in the zoning and development code, and the PAD overlay process allows relief and gives greater flexibility, such as building height and parking reductions. The proposed project also meets the criteria for zoning map amendment, planned area development, and development plan review. Staff had 5 unique conditions of approval to address the timing and phasing of construction, the archaeologically sensitive status of the site, a screen wall along the north property line, and a condition to address a redesign of the designated turnaround along the Scottdale Road frontage where the parking area is located. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff? Commissioner Spears?
The provision that the building permit has to be within the 3-year, what happens if they build phase 1 and decide not to build phase 2 and 3?
So this stipulates that there is a time frame in which the applicant needs to submit their application for a building permit within
Right.
the 3 years, otherwise the building permit expires.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Lloyd?
Thank you, Chair. So along that same line, since they are on 3 separate parcels currently owned by the same owner, is the design for each phase standalone so that if phase 1 only was done and phase 2 and 3 were never done, phase 1 could stand on its own as far as design, parking, infrastructure, or if phase 1 and 2 were done and phase 3 was never done, same question.
Yeah, Chair, Commissioner Lloyd, I would say they are on different parcels, so they could stand alone, but the idea is that we have these stipulations in place so that the construction is finished in a timely manner.
Yes, but market conditions change and financing
Yeah.
things change. So just making sure that if the other future phases never happened, ingress, egress, parking, all of that is factored into the design of each phase.
Yes, and there is proper access to each phase.
And Mr. Chairman and Lily, correct me if I'm wrong, we also are requiring that they combine the parcels into one lot, so that might alleviate your concern as well. So it will be one parcel, even though it's got 3 separate phases.
Okay, so part of this approval is to combine the parcels.
A preliminary and final plat will be required.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Tom?
Follow-up question on this. So if they fail to complete phase 3, within, it would be, I guess, 6 years at that point, right? Would they have to come back to the DRC, or does their entitlement go away on that portion? What happens to that portion?
Commissioner Tom, Chair Johnson. So typically those conditions of approval, the time lengths are expirations of the entitlement, the design. If the application of the building permit starts, they vested the zoning, they vested the PED, the entitlements for the site. But it's the design review that could potentially lapse in future phases. So the applicants will have to either make a choice of, do they keep the, phase 1 and phase 2 of the project, or then do they resolve any final details of that plan if there's no plans to move forward in future phases. So they'll need to make some of those decisions at that time frame. There is the ability to provide some administrative relief, administrative extensions if they're still working on the project to still try to make it happen. But those times will come typically when an entitlement is nearing expiration and deciding with the applicant what they want to do in those future phases.
Okay, and then timeline-wise, so if we get to year 6, they submit their plans for phase 3, they can prolong that building permit application process, potentially?
Only as long as the building permit is active.
It's active?
Yeah, so
okay.
they're subject to the timeline stipulations that are required within the building permit plan review, which is typically 1 year with a potential 6-month extension.
All right, so they can have their entitlement, and then as part of this condition, apply for the building permits, and then still kind of be pushing this along.
Making sure that they're active in those timeframes.
Okay, thank you. And then my second question is on height. Can you explain the discrepancy in height? The applicant showed 55 feet, where they're asking for 75 feet on our
The measurement.
request, and then you said they're at 65 feet.
Yes, Chair Johnson, Commissioner Tom, the city of Tempe measures building height from grade. So the grade point is lower. So the 55 feet that the applicant was talking about is from finished floor.
That's
From
at finished
finished floor.
grade? That's at finished grade of the site, or?
So the 55 feet that the applicant was talking about was the 5th story at finished floor. But the city of Tempe, we measure grade from top of curb, which is the midpoint of the front property line. And then the McKellop, the grade point is, I think, I'll go back to the elevations. The grade point is,
Yeah, I
I
can't.
think, 9 feet below. It's kind of hard to see, but
Okay.
I think it's 9 feet below finished floor.
And that's just because of the natural lay of the land. As that land goes to the west, it goes, it gradually trends downward,
Yes.
trends lower, okay. So at Scottdale Road, truly from the top of sidewalk to the top of the building, it's approximately 55 feet.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions for staff? Okay, thank you. We'll call you back up. Okay, I'd like to open the hearing now for citizen input and comments. I'll be calling again. If you wish to speak on this item, please fill out one of these cards. They can be found up here at the front. You can fill out your name, submit the card, and I will call your name. You will be given 3 minutes to speak, and you'll be monitored. We'll be monitoring that. There's a little light box. It'll be right in front of you when you're speaking, so you can keep an eye on that as well. I will call out the person who is up and then the person who is on deck. So first person that wishes to speak is Julie Lind. Please approach and state your name and city of residence. On deck is Mr. Robert Miller. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Johnson and members of the commission. My name is Julie Lind. I live at 626 East Taylor Street in Tempe, which is one street over from, I think I saw my house on some of these pictures. We have lived there. My husband and I are here tonight, and we have lived in our home there on Taylor Street for 20 years. And we love the neighborhood so much, and we love North Tempe neighbors. We care so much about our community, and this development and this, what I consider value to our neighborhood, is welcome, and we are excited for it. We have been notified about it. We appreciate that. We appreciate the information. We appreciate the care and concern about all of the things, how it looks, including the affordability. Our neighborhood is filled with people who, we bought the house that we have because it's what we could afford. As with our first house in Tempe, on the other side, we care about value, and we care about that, and we think that this is a great spot. Our neighborhood is extraordinary, in my opinion. The amenities and the potential in North Tempe is, for the most part, I don't think well known, and not that I want to tell a lot of people, frankly, about it, but this is within walking distance where I walk. I would appreciate it. I've spoken to the neighbors on my street, and the ones that I've spoken to will appreciate this and do appreciate this and look forward to it. We hope that it receives approval. And I would just also like to say that what's there now is not a huge problem, but this will be an improvement that we would desire. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your comments. All right, next up is Robert Miller, and on deck would be Darlene Justice.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, good evening.
Welcome.
Robert Miller, 5931 South Newberry Road, Tempe. I'm here to speak for this project, and I have a couple of concerns. One, there is a lot of talk about the general plan and its conformance, this project's conformance to the general plan, which is true, it does. On the other hand, there is also a component of the general plan that speaks to affordable housing. This project is yet another example of market rate buildings which are coming into our community which do not address the issue of affordable housing. They're going to be displacing, what is it? Anyway, there's a net of 439 units here, and they're displacing some 490 individuals. Many of them probably will not be able to afford to live here. That's, on one hand, that's not our concern. The legislature's taken that out of our hands. On the other hand, it is a concern enough that the citizens of this community have voted for a general plan that includes affordable housing. I would strongly urge that we come back to that and try to figure out some way, if it's negotiations, it's whatever, horse trading, you name it, that we can increase the supply of affordable housing in our community. The only other point I would make about this project is that there are 24,000 square feet of commercial space here. How many of you have spent a lot of time at the corner of Scottdale Road and McKellips? It's not very walkable. I don't think it's a walkable environment. And I'm not sure that this commercial space is actually going to be viable. It may be, it's worth trying, but this project would look a whole lot better on Apache Boulevard than it looks where it is sited. So thank you for your time, thank you for your listening, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up is Darlene Justice with Kim Gaffney-Loza on deck.
Well, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Darlene Justice. I have lived in this neighborhood since 1965. I've been very involved in this community. We have seen over the last few years Scottdale Road and the downward trend that it had been in. This development will help us with the revitalization that we see taking place. Within North Tempe, we have the county island, which has always been a problem, but we now have a big development along Miller in the county island. That's a big kickstart. This is another kickstart that would be on the corner of McKellips and Scottdale Road. North Tempe, as I know, has the most diverse housing in Tempe. We have single-family homes, we have ranch homes, we have duplexes, we have quadplexes. We have Concord Village, which is 350 homes, where 40% of them are HUD assisted. We have all sorts of housing, and the housing in North Tempe has been vibrant except for a few places, and especially along Scottdale Road. This development has deteriorated over time. This development will help us. We have a Starbucks across the street that now only has drive-through. However, they said as things improve, they will reopen up so we can have the meetings we used to have in Starbucks. This is an area that will really thrive. When we moved here, we've always loved the place. We worked hard to get the Papago Park Preserve. We're right next to the lake. This is a very walkable area, but we have to have the right kind of things to walk past. And this housing will really help accomplish that. This is all part of a revitalization. We have some other places along Scottsdale Road too that things will hopefully be happening. And I'm an older gal. Sometimes older folks don't want change, but we want change that improves our community and people that we understand what this can do. And we do have very diverse housing. Like I said, we need affordable housing throughout Tempe. Maybe South Tempe also could stand to have some affordable housing. So I just thank you. Everyone has met with us, been very respectful. We've been meeting with them for about a couple years. And I hope that you approve this as they proposed it. It'll be great for our community. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. All right, next up is Kim Gaffney-Loza with Ken Jacobson on deck. I think that's the right last name. Welcome.
Good evening, Chair Johnson and Commissioners. I'm also for this proposal. This company has been very good about reaching out to the neighbors. They have taken suggestions. I asked for the line of sight, even though I'm not within the radius of the project, because I know that's been a concern of neighbors on other projects. They did that. I'm excited to see their plant palette. We didn't have that at the neighborhood meeting. And I'm definitely a desert plant person. So to see the palette of desert trees was great. I love that. And it seems to be quite a good quantity. I think walkability has to do with how much you actively walk. I don't think that, at least from my house, which is less than a quarter of a mile, it's an easy walk. But the other thing we have is we have a circulator that goes down McKellips. And along that section there, it stops everywhere. So you don't have to be at a particular bus stop. Along Scottsdale Road, there's a regular bus line, and all those do lead to the light rail. We have a lot of bike lanes. College is used extensively by a lot of bicyclists. We have a roundabout going in at College and McKellips. That's hopefully going to start this year to help with our traffic concerns. McKellips is a pretty wide road, so I don't think it's going to impact our traffic that much. I'm all for affordable housing, and if there's a quality affordable housing project that wants to come in, I would definitely be for it. But I really think this is a quality project. What's now called Scottdale Gateway, which is actually in Tempe, is getting tired looking. And I think this will be a definite improvement to our neighborhood, and having it called Tempe Gateway, which is more appropriate, I think it is a great improvement. So it's got my full approval, and those are most of my neighbors that I've talked to. Thank you very much.
I may have missed it, but if you wouldn't mind stating your name and
Oh, I'm
city of
sorry.
residence.
Kim Gaffney-Loza. I live at 206 East Papago Drive.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Ken Jacobson. If you could come up, state your name and city of residence. Up on deck is Lori Herman.
Hi, I'm Ken Jacobson. I've been in this apartment complex for 21 years. I graduated from ASU in 1982. I lived in the same apartment complex for a few years after that, lived in Minneapolis for 13 years after that. I moved back to this apartment complex in 2002. I was there for 21 years. When I first moved back here, back to the complex, it had deteriorated quite a bit from when I was living there in the 1980s. It's been improved every year since then. Right now, it's the best quality it's ever been. It really bothers me. People are saying it's not good quality. I could go on and on about all the improvements that have been made there. It has a new gym. It has a new playground. It's got all kinds of new stuff. It has 3 swimming pools already right now. I'm talking about amenities. I think the biggest problem, the thing that bothers me most about this whole thing, I voted for the 2050 plan. I thought it was going to fulfill its requirements. Let me mention couple of things it says on this. One of the guiding principles is preservation of neighborhood character. There's nothing of this density within a mile north, half a mile south, or anywhere east and west of this apartment complex. Right now it's 25 units per acre. The whole area is the same thing, 25 units per acre. When they first notified us about this project. I got a letter in November of 23. When I first heard about that, I talked to people in the neighborhood about it, in the complex, and I told them, I can't imagine the city of Tempe would upzone this from 25 to 65 or 62 dwelling units per acre, since it's such a huge jump from everything around here. There's nothing like this anywhere nearby. I'm sorry I was wrong about that. One other thing that, I've only got 3 minutes, I'm talking fast, I'm sorry. Another thing that the 2050 plan said, a distinct transition between the urban core downtown at Tempe Town Lake and ASU. Now, there's already a really nice transition. At Tempe Town Lake, there are high rises. That's great. At Curry Road, they go down to 3 to 4 stories. That's nice. North of that, it's all residential. It's all 25 dwelling units per acre. You'd be putting this 5 stories with a 6th floor on top in the middle of this 25, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't fit the neighborhood at all. It's completely different. It's not part of a transition at all. This is the edge of town. It transitions from the lake nicely down to the residential area. This is a residential area. I mean, I could go on about this. I mean, it's completely not the complex, talk about deterioration. The complex was renovated completely about 15 years ago, inside and outside, totally. They put covered spaces in the parking lots. I could go on about that. It has a new gym. Like I said, it has 2 playgrounds that are new. The trees have been replacing trees like crazy. A lot of them have died. Everything is being well taken care of. Like I said, it's never been as good a condition as it has been now. I've lived there for 21 years. A lot of people have lived there that long as well. I hope to live there indefinitely. I like the place a lot. I've looked at a lot of other apartments for the same price, the same size, and I've never found anything I like as well. We're running out of time? Yeah, okay, hold on. The biggest thing is, right now there are 133 studio apartments that rent for about $1,000 a month. There's also at least 101 bedrooms that rent for about $1,000 a month. The apartments in this new place are going to start, for the one bedroom will start at $1,600. The studios will start at $1,200 and go up to, what have I got? $1,590 for studios. They're not affordable. There's nothing affordable in this whole new thing. There's a lot of affordable apartments in the place I'm in right now. The person that lives across from me, there's an elderly woman from Louisiana that moved there a couple of years ago. She's retired. I think she's living on Social Security. There's a woman who bags groceries at Albertsons. A lot of students, a lot of people like that. Some more other elderly residents are living there. They were hoping to live there for the rest of their lives and not be uprooted to suit a developer. I'm hoping too that, for example, it says, another thing that said on the 2050 plan, Tempe's, what does it say?
If you could wrap up your comments.
Okay, Tempe is dedicated to preserving existing affordable housing stock. That would be, if you approve this project, you'd be abandoning that principle. Okay?
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I think we started the timer a little late there, but we appreciate those comments. Next up is Lori Herman. Please come up, state your name, city of residence, and then on deck is Milan Pich.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lori Herman. I live at 1829 North Palm Drive. I'm approximately a quarter mile from the development. I've lived in that neighborhood for 44 years. The first 20 in Concord Village, which, as the previous speaker spoke, it is a government-assisted housing. It is extremely affordable, and this city needs more of those. Those units are twice the size, the Concord Village units are twice the size of the existing studio units. And as the previous speaker said, the existing studio units, there are over 133. Those units are approximately 400 square feet total, and they're over $1,000 now. They're going to reduce the amount of studio space from 133 to 42 studio units and doubtfully keep the same price point. This is the polar opposite of affordable housing. A gated community, as the previous speaker said, is completely contrary to the surrounding area. This is not Scottdale North. This is Tempe North. And the amount of congestion and population and density, cars and individuals will shift the cost of that project from the city to the individual residents. The 2050 plan says that the point of the plan is to provide density and intensified land uses are located near transit lines and open spaces. Sure, we have great open spaces in North Tempe, that's why we live there. However, if you're gonna have 1,600 car spaces all pouring onto Scottdale Road and McKellips Road, where there's one orbit and one bus 72 coming down there, you're not gonna have any public transport. I can't imagine that this developer anticipates paying for the light rail to be extended up there. I can't imagine that this developer is going to be paying for the necessary additional police and fire. I can't imagine that they're going to pay for the additional increases in sewage and water delivery. But you know who's going to suffer all those intangible and tangible consequences? The residents that are surrounded. I now live in Marlborough Park. That neighborhood is not a gated community. It is a more upscale unit to space, and we are spoiled rotten by living in North Tempe. I can understand why they want this property, but as several speakers below said, this design as it stands is appropriate for Apache, not for our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Had a late arrival. Next up is Lane Carway. And then on deck is Milan Pich. If you could state your name and city of residence, please.
Hi, my name is Lane Carway. I live at 1422 North Sunset Drive in Cavalier Hills Neighborhood Subdivision, which is directly just south of McKellips. I've lived there for 25 plus years. Prior to that, I lived almost 5 years at Fox Street Apartments, which is known as Scottdale Gateway. So I probably in this chamber have the best knowledge of the apartment complex and the surrounding area there, as living in both of those. Oh, I'm sorry, we all been complaining about people not hearing. In any case, first of all, I want to thank the developer and the staff here because they have bent over backwards to accommodate us. I was quite upset with hearing all these South Tempeans complaining about this project and questioning why are they sticking their nose up in our neighborhood? Are we doing that to their neighborhoods? Because this project is something that my community really wants. I have spoken to numerous neighbors throughout on the east side of Scottdale Road, north of McKellips. Everybody's been wanting to know, when are we going to get some amenities up here? Why don't we get amenities? What do we have to do, Lane? Well, we need to start building up our density a little. And this project does that. They have been bent over backwards to accommodate my neighborhood, which is something most developers won't do. And we're looking at the time frame. I think that works for everybody. So what I am thankful for more than anything is the fact that we have a chance now, North Tempe, to do something about issues we have had, which are no amenities. And as Darlene Justice said, Starbucks. My place to do a neighborhood meeting, Bikini Beans. So there's nowhere else to go unless I want to go to South Scottdale or go further south on Tempe. So we need to get this approved and get it going. So thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Carway. Next up is Milan Pich. Please state your name and city of residence.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. It's good to see you. My name is Milan Pich. I'm not a resident of Tempe. I am a resident of South Scottdale. I live about a quarter mile from this development, and I do walk this area a lot. I wanted to start by acknowledging my privilege in owning my own home and not having to worry about paying rent. Currently here in Maricopa, most people pay over 50% of the salaries on rent. And I stand here in solidarity of the people that have to worry about how to find affordable housing. And I'm not here to talk about affordable housing. I'm here to talk about the benefits of the trees that are located at this property. According to the staff report, Most of the landscape was put in place around the 1970s. So some of the trees that are currently on the property are over 50 years old. I was at the property earlier this week, and I took some photos to show you some of the benefits that the trees have for the surrounding area. This is an area of Tempe where the tree canopy is only 11.9%, and I wanted to remind the commission that Tempe has a goal of 25% tree canopy and other covers, which I'm sure this development can have based on its height along adjacent sidewalks. However, a building does not provide the same environmental benefits that trees do in terms of providing shade, cooling, aesthetics, and also a respite for wildlife that migrates through Arizona, and wildlife that lives there. While I was walking around the area, and when I walk around the area, I hear a lot of birds. It's very beautiful to hear that in an area that is usually as congested as that corner is. I have some photos. I know I can't pass them around, but this is how high some of the trees are on that property. They provide complete shade for that corner, so people that are waiting to cross the street are not crossing in a rush because they're trying to cross to somewhere cooler. I've also taken photos that show that as early as 5 p.m., the trees that are along Scottdale Road fully shade the east side walk of Scottdale Road, which is the city I live in. However, I choose to walk on the other side because it's much cooler. But the benefits that these trees provide in terms of their size and carbon sequestration are not the benefits that new landscaping can provide. And I understand that this is a massive project, but I do want to remind the commission that you do have the option to approve projects with certain stipulations. And I would like to request that some of the stipulations are at least partial protection of the existing trees on site. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, was there anyone else in the audience wishing to speak on this item tonight? Okay, if you can, okay. Please approach and state your name and city of residence.
Hi there, good evening. My name is Angus Pollard, 603 McKellips. I live directly south of the development. I have a couple things. I'm pro-development and pro-improving the housing stock in North Tempe. Definitely keen on having a affordable housing component, if that's a possibility. Would strongly urge that that's something that can be considered. One thing I'd like to mention that sort of rubs me the wrong way on this whole thing is that when the developer's up here saying that, you know, they've had high consideration with the surrounding neighborhoods for a step back, 2 and 3 stories, up to the 4 and 5 in the middle. They show the photos on the north side and they show the photos on the west side. But they always leave out the photos on the south side. Through the whole process, they left out the photos on the south side. And if you see in that presentation that there is 5 stories directly facing single-family residential. And like the previous presenter said a few back, it doesn't really fit the neighborhood. There is no 5-story complex directly across from single-family residential. I'm not against 5-story per se, but having 5-story across from single-family residential, developer will say, well, McKellips Road is really wide, and they say it's 100 feet wide. I don't know anywhere in Tempe where every lane is 20 feet wide. That road is 60 feet wide, right? Like all of our other roads. So that's something that I would strongly urge us to consider, that there could be a step back that affects the southern facing side of that too. That's half my time. All right, so the other concern I have is that with mixed use residential 4, a strong component, and that matches the general plan, is to increase alternative modes of transportation, biking, walking, buses, right? The way the developer answers that in their development proposal is by saying, don't worry, the light rail is only a 2-mile drive away. I'm sorry, but how is a 2-mile drive decreasing the amount of, or increasing the amount of alternative modes of transportation? If you walk along that street, and I encourage all of you to, on the south side of McKellips, you'll notice something. That road narrows really sharply after Marlboro Park. What that means is that there is no buffer between the road and the sidewalk. Sidewalk is 36 inches wide, bus comes by 50 miles an hour, and it's really not safe to walk. Mountain bikers bike every day from Tempe and Scottdale through the gateway of Tempe towards Papago Park for the lakes and the trails and the beauty that is there. It is not safe to bike on the road because the speed limit is way too high. It's 40 miles an hour. My driveway pulls right onto that road, and the amount of pedestrians walking both ways each day and the amount of cars that are on that road is concerning. So I would strongly urge if traffic could consider potentially lowering the speed limit, potentially adding a light where that huge intersection is going to be, where the entrance of the apartment building is on across from Cavalier on McKellips. There's no light there. 2,000 cars a day could be pulling in through there, which is at least twice the amount that's there now that are spread out across multiple entrances. Also, there's a 20-foot setback with a 10-foot sidewalk on their side. I don't think that they can really adequately build the large amount of trees necessary to provide shade cover for such a large building. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I believe we have some online commenters wishing to speak.
I have 5 people that submitted a request to speak virtually prior to the 4 p.m. cutoff. I see 4 of them are online right now. The first one will be Jackie Colgrove. Let me unmute her.
Hello, Jackie, are you able to hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please state your name and city of residence.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Jackie Colgrove, and I'm in Tempe, Arizona. I've lived between Tempe and South Scottsdale for over 40 years. I guess I have a few concerns about adding or building this division. A couple actually after listening to tonight is approving something that's not going to happen or even start happening for 4 years. There's so much that can change within our city and economics and everything within 4 years that I think it's kind of reckless to even have a conversation 4 years from when a project starts. That will potentially take 9 years to build. My other concern is I live in Concord Village and we actually have 373 units. We are a low to moderate income property that provides a lot of affordable housing for Tempe. And in this area, I just don't think that project fits. We don't have a grocery store other than Food City within 5 miles of any of the residences. The majority of our tax dollars or sales tax dollars are spent in Scottsdale because there is no infrastructure in our area. And I just don't see a plan for that. I don't know how you can double the amount of people living in that area and expect where do you go grocery shopping on a Friday night? If you wanted to go grocery shopping and there was an ASU game, it takes you 45 minutes to get to the closest grocery store in Tempe. My other concern is the displacement of the people living there. Yes, it's going to be a few years, but there really is nothing that's affordable. And I guess it's kind of hard to say that $1,000 for a studio is affordable. It just seems like we're adding more ASU kids to this side of the 202, and you're adding them into an area that is mostly populated with residents that have lived here and own their homes or are living in more of like a single family style of life. And the idea, I think, of walking along Scottdale Road to any type of anything, I just don't see it. I mean, if you live in this area and you see the amount of people going 100 miles an hour down Scottdale Road, I just don't see it feasible. And then to hear that there's going to be 24,000 square feet of retail space and about 80 parking spaces for that, how are you going to have retail that's going to make it if there's only 80 places to park? Where is everyone else going to park that wants to patron these establishments? So I just think there's a lot to think about, and it's a little early when it's 4 years out to be approving something that the area can change, times can change, needs can change. And I guess those are my main points. I thank you guys for letting me speak tonight.
Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
Next speaker will be Christian Wimmer.
Opportunity to speak. My name is Christian Wimmer. I'm a resident. I've been a resident in Tempe for 44 years. I live in Concord Village as well. Although I do believe that the growth is necessary for the community for the right reasons, it's been very clear to me that the developers have not showed that this building is going to alleviate our housing crisis for low-income individuals. The traffic in this area is already bad, and I just don't understand how this development will improve the situation. Well, where will these new residents go grocery shopping? It seems like this project is only going to benefit someone's pocket rather than making a positive impact on the community. And I just strongly urge you guys to reconsider this project. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you.
Next speaker will be Elizabeth Stewart.
Ms. Stewart, can you hear us?
Hello, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, thank you for conducting this hearing. My name is Elizabeth Stewart. I am a resident of Tempe. I would urge you to recommend against the requesting zoning amendments and recommend against the Tempe Gateway project. The project will tear down 487 affordable apartments and replace them with 910 marketplace units. This is contrary to the representations the council made to voters in urging the 2050 plan and will make the affordable housing crisis worse. Simply moving existing residents of affordable housing to other affordable housing will make a net decrease in affordable housing. There should be some requirement that some accommodation be made to the residents that are on site. So, in addition, I think that excellent points were made about the tree canopy and the setback and the danger on the south side of the project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Looks like the final speaker will be Renee Wimmer.
Last name is Wimmer?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you with us, Ms. Wimmer?
I'm sending a request for them to unmute, but they're not unmuting.
Okay. Ms. Wimmer, can you hear us? Okay. No? All right, if they come back, then let me know. Okay, I'd like to invite the applicant back up to respond to the public comments that we've heard.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this is difficult stuff. I mean, anytime you are taking existing housing stock and replacing it, it's very challenging. And, the developer here is really trying to do it right. We've taken, and certainly you've heard that reflected in the commentary from the community, we've taken a significant amount of time going out and talking with folks. This project, frankly, started by talking with Darlene, talking with the North Tempe residents, and there was a strong desire expressed for market rate housing. And that is why we've brought this proposal forward. And I get that it's challenging. We certainly acknowledge there's a tremendous need for more affordable housing. We just think this is the right project here. We think this will help revitalize North Tempe. We've heard over and over for years, frankly, the desire to have a grocery store up here. Adding this type of density makes that happen. Adding this type of density makes that retail along Scottdale Road viable, makes this a much more walkable, synergistic community, which is why we think this is the right proposal here. We've tried to do it right. We've tried to do it thoughtfully with the neighborhood, give the time to talk to the existing residents, have a relocation plan to work with them, and to make this as comfortable as we possibly can in what is already a very uncomfortable situation. I will tell you we're open to trying to explore the existing trees. If any can be retained there for shade purposes, we're happy to try to do that. I think that was one of the very useful comments we heard mentioned. We're happy to continue to work with Angus on whether or not a step down there on McKellips would be appropriate. And we did want to mention that we had also committed earlier that we would be adding some date palms along McKellips to help screen some of that height as well. And I think I failed to mention that on the record earlier. So with that, Mr. Chair, we would respectfully request your approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Commissioner Casano?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Riddell, during the period that this development is going to take, 9 years or 10 years, who is going to manage the existing units? Is that your client?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Casano, it is. And I should tell you, my client owns the property today. So they are the existing landlord today. So they would own it throughout this entire process. Every project has been designed to stand alone in all ways. So it can be fully permitted and exist, and then additional phases can come on at whatever time is appropriate.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lloyd?
Regarding the retail square footage, in the packet, it's very specific about a clinic that's like 8,700 square feet. Is there some sort of a tenant use that they've already identified, or why is that portion of the retail identified as a clinic?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Lloyd, we do not have a specific tenant identified for that. It was simply because we were asked to assign parking ratios, so we gave it our best estimate of what that retail would look like.
And I know there was a concern made about that's potentially maybe too much retail square footage. Does your client have a response on that?
We actually think it's the right size square footage, particularly as the residents come on board here. Obviously, if you're adding 910 units, you're creating a lot more density, and I think that will help it ensure it is ultimately successful retail. We carefully looked at what that right size retail is, and we feel like we've achieved it.
Other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Joseph, was there anything staff would like to address from the public comments?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, one thing I would like to add as a condition of the approval for the planned area development, that will require a building permit application to be filed within 2 years, and then following after the first phase, it'll be 3 years.
And was there any addressing the trees? I would imagine with the development of this magnitude, at least the footprint, I should say, it would be fairly difficult to save many, if any, of those trees.
Correct. It might be difficult, but there's any.
Happy to evaluate it.
So if the commission would be interested in something like that, we could have some kind of a condition that would dictate to work with staff to identify trees that could be saved.
That can be, yes.
Yeah, okay. Commissioner Tom?
So on your condition of approval, which is number 2, it would be phase 1 within 2 years, and then 2 and 3 years prior to the phasing, right?
Yes, so.
Because right now, we struck through 2 and it just says 3 years.
Yes, so under the zoning amendment and planned area development conditions of approval, it's condition number 1 that references that a building permit application shall be made within 2 years.
Okay, so it's not going to conflict with condition number 2. Phase 1 and 2 should be constructed.
So, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Tom and Willie, I don't know if there's a confusion. So there's the condition number 1 under the zoning amendment and PUD, which talks about the building permit application to be made within 2 years of city council approval. And then there's condition number 2 under the development plan review conditions of approval.
Right.
I just wanted to make sure which one that you were referring to.
You're referring to what I'm looking at here.
Okay.
We have always understood we have to apply within 2 years.
Okay. Okay, I'm comfortable with it.
Other questions for staff?
One more for the applicant.
Commissioner Lloyd would like to would the applicant please come back? We have one more question for you.
Okay, sorry about that, but I know you mentioned earlier not making any component of this affordable and participating in Hometown for All, but understanding that your owner already owns it, I think they've owned it for a significant period of time. I do have concern about some of the senior population that may be displaced. Would your owner reconsider potentially making some sort of accommodation, especially for the senior population?
I mean, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Lloyd, it's certainly a discussion we can continue to have. We recognize the ongoing sensitivity to it. I just can't commit to actually doing it here tonight.
I guess that's the best we can ask for.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate it. All right, so we will close out the public hearing portion of this item. Now, commission discussion or a motion. Commissioner Spears, would like to speak?
I just want to, I have major concerns with this project. Taking affordable housing away and not replacing it within the same area, moving them to Miller and Roosevelt is certainly not, it's taking them out of their neighborhood and you're taking away from people who have lived there. But my bigger concern is the phasing of this. And we've all seen the market conditions change radically within a 10-year period. And, you know, I can see phase one maybe being built, and then that's the end of it. So I'm not thrilled with this project.
Commissioner Schwartz?
Yeah, I share some of Commissioner Spears' concerns regarding the project and the phasing and the timeline for all of these phases. Additionally, we heard, you know, the applicant share that they didn't want to start until 2028, even though the conditions require them to submit a building application within 2 years. It gives a lot of opportunity for market conditions to change and even sale of the asset, as far as maybe a developer who may not be as willing to work with the community. So that's some of my concern, along with the enforceability of any sort of relocation program. It's really wonderful to say, and we all hope it happens, but not something that's enforceable by our commission or the city.
Other commissioner comments? I'll just make some comments. You know, I think we had a mix of people's support and not support for this project this evening. A lot of good discussion was had related to people from the neighborhood, many who welcome this project, and many others who either lived in this project or live in an adjacent project, or the location of the project, I should say, not in support. I hear both sides of this, and you know, it's a challenging project to hear, and when you have a kind of a mix of support and those that are not in support, I feel I'm leaning more towards the acceptance, the approval of this project. I think it does bring, it basically doubles the density, or it doubles the number of units on this location currently. Does bring some of that density that's needed to have some of the other amenities that I know this community is looking for, and probably the whole community would be looking for those types of amenities. I do see the challenge with the phasing, and understand that I think we've seen some other projects where we had hoped, where they'd been phased, we'd hoped that they would move forward, and we've seen some of those not move forward. So that is a challenging component for this project. But those are my thoughts for this one, and willing to hear some other comments or entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, we have heard about the markets changing over the period of time and everything else. That is always a concern, but that's not our role. We can't control economics. We can't control who goes into retail space. We can't get a grocery store anywhere. We can't put a clinic here. We can't do any of that as a commission or as a city. We have to make the area attractive that will attract those things to that area. And one of the things we've seen is that you have to have people that use it, that live nearby, because I would not drive up there to go to a grocery store, nor do those people like to drive down here to go to a grocery store. So it'll serve the local people, but we have no control over that. We can't make those decisions. I think if these are the owners of the property, they are operating the property, these are their tenants, and you know, I look at 2 to 3 years, yeah, that's a long time out, and things will change, and they may be back here. But I don't think we can determine that. That's not our role. So with that, I would make a motion for approval of this project.
Okay. Commissioner Casano has moved for approval. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Tom has seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And those opposed? Okay, so that motion passes with Commissioner Spears, Lloyd, and Vice Chair in opposition. Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to state for the record, because I thought there might have been some more discussion, but for me, it wasn't about density or height. It was about maintaining the affordable housing stock, as a lot of people brought up with the general plan. So I just wanted to state the reason I voted no.
And just one more general comment. This is a recommendation to the City Council, so I think that context is important. Thank you, Commissioner Lloyd. Okay, moving on to item number 10. If we could have the applicant please approach.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Nick Wood, Snell and Wilmer 1, Arizona Center, Phoenix. Before I start, some of you have known me a long time, and there's things that I've learned over the 40, almost 45 years that I've been doing this. Many of them are guiding principles that I've received from my parents, especially my mother, who was Italian. One of those is to be humble at every step of the way. The other is to be respectful, respect the process. Particularly you, particularly staff. And by the way, your staff, as usual, have been incredible in this particular project, again, as they usually are. This is a very significant project, and it's taken a lot of work to get us here today, and they've been wonderful to work with, as usual. And also to respect even those who oppose us. Mr. Amorosi is here tonight, as is Mr. Kent. I've worked with Phil on a number of different projects over the years, and I have a great deal of respect and regard for him as well as for Paul. Other guiding principles are things such as understanding that the one constant in an ever-changing world is change, right? I moved here from Milwaukee, Wisconsin back in 1985. And I've seen a lot of change here. In fact, I lived in Tempe until 2020 when I got divorced. But the thing is, the other thing is when I'm dealing with a project and I'm working with staff and I'm working and doing presentations, using objective standards, objective criteria rather than subjective ones. And as I go through my presentation, I think you'll understand where that's coming from. You know, when I'm using objective criteria, I'm not just making it up, right? I'm using materials and information that are really created from others. Subjectivity comes in a lot, especially when you're talking about tall buildings such as this one. Everybody has an opinion about height. Some people love it, some people hate it, some people are ambivalent, and they're all over the place. If you have 10 people and ask them about a tall building, you know, you'll get 10 different opinions. If when I'm a lawyer, you'll get 11. But the thing is, I try and approach things from an objective standpoint, and then hopefully there's an understanding of how we got to where we are and why I'm advocating for a certain project itself. So with that introduction, the property is at the southwest corner of the intersection of rural and Apache. As you can see, it's currently the old Vine. The old Vine closed back in 2022, late 2022. That building really can't be used anymore. I used to go there from time to time, and it was getting pretty long in the tooth when I used to go there. And of course, the Chevron station is included. Around us, we have ASU to the north, we have ASU to the west. We have some boroughs immediately south of us, along with Voodoo and Waterberg, and then ASU is also south of that. Across the street, we have CVS Pharmacy and the Moxie. And then, of course, we have some other student housing projects, and this is a student housing project. One, of course, is the district. Some of you may recall that I did the district about almost 10 years ago now, I think. And then the next one I brought before you was what is now known as Carmen. It was actually known as the Rise at the time. And then following that, I brought the Apollo, which you can see on the far right-hand corner. And then, of course, the Marshall. You just recommended approval just about 5-6 months ago. And of course, you know, we have both streetcar as well as light rail here, and it's in that area. Just so you know, my clients attempted to acquire the Sombrros property from the owner. The owner would not sell, no matter how high they offered the number, simply not interested. So we come to you with this particular project at this location, at this corner. I want to talk a little bit about my client. I've done, I think, 8 student housing projects. You just approved another one earlier, recommended approval of another one earlier today for Dinnerstein. Landmark is pretty special in that space. They are the largest student housing developer and operator in the country. They are 20 years old, as you can see on the screen. They use their own capital to invest. They're long-term holders. When I did the district, for example, you know, my clients back then owned it for a little over 2 years, and then they sold it. Of course, the Rise changed hands to become the Carmen. The Apollo changed hands right after I did that. Landmark is a long-term holder. They invest their money and they hold them for a long time, and I'll give you an example. They're also all about relationships, right? Not only relationships with the city, but we visited with Dr. Runn's office and with Dr. Vogel. Dr. Runn was busy being athletic director for ASU, but we visited with Dr. Vogel and establishing that relationship, that communication between the operator and ASU, because obviously we're going to have these students. And what's important is, it's critically important that we have a very safe environment for ASU students, because if they're unhappy and they don't feel safe, they may not just change their place of residence, they actually may change universities. We can't have that happen. So we establish that relationship. And of course, we will do the security plan with the Tempe Police Department as we always done. In fact, I think you may remember, I created that plan because there was all kinds of issues with some of the private student housing projects. So we created this security plan where there's an agreement with the police department regarding everything from security, photography, access, all kinds of things that I'll show you as I go through my presentation. Landmark is the #1 developer of student housing in the country. They now manage 70,000 beds. Top 10 in student housing, and also 99% in satisfaction scores from the residents. So they're a great, really corporate citizen, if you will, of a city. These are all the locations that they are today throughout the country. Now, I went to University of Wisconsin. Unfortunately, they're not there, but I went to college so long ago, my dorm was more like a Quonset hut. I had to go down the hall and use the bathroom or take a shower. They currently have locations in a couple of the other schools, right, down in Tucson and Flagstaff, and this is the first one really for ASU. Here's an example of some of their projects. Again, they take very great care. in the quality of their project, the design, and designing things really that look and feel like the location where they are. I mentioned change, right, and how it happens. I moved here in 1985. In 1985, there was no 202, there was no Tempe Town Lake. Tempe was a wonderful, small town. It's still a wonderful town, but it's growing. But as an example of how things have changed, these were the tallest buildings in the city of Tempe through 2000. The first 5 of them through 1991 were really all on ASU campus. The first real private tall building was US Airways headquarters in 2000. That was at 130 feet at 9 floors. And then we've seen what's happened since then, right? We have seen how buildings have gone up, and they've gotten taller and taller and taller. And I understand that there are those who don't like that, and that's okay, right? Everyone has a right to their opinion. Everybody has a right to their own feelings, and I will never question that. I will never argue with them and tell them they're wrong, because they're not. But one of the things, again, that is a fact, and this is all information, again, not coming from me, but a fact is Tempe is the 9th largest city in the state of Arizona. And you have a population today of 190,000 in 2024. The 2020 census, which by the way I was in, there was 181,000 people. Tempe has grown by almost 10,000 people in 4 years. The issue, of course, is also, look at your density per square mile. You're at 4,758 people per square mile. Now this is 39.98 square miles is the entire city of Tempe. Remember, 640 acres of that is ASU campus. So actually, you even have more concentration of residents, people who live here, according to the census. So when you have the highest density of the top 12 cities in the state, and you have the smallest square foot area, how do you accommodate your growth? How do you accommodate almost 10,000 more people in the last 4 years? How do you accommodate a world-class university? ASU, when I moved here in 1985, did not have the best reputation in the world, right? Today, it's one of the finest universities in the entire world, not just the country. In fact, their enrollment in 2023 was 112,000 kids. Of that, 51,000, or 45%, are residents of the state of Arizona. And 61,000, 54%, are from out of state. And over 10% about that are even people from outside the country. People want to come here because the education is first rate. So now we have 2 things going on, right? We have a city that's growing in population. As we see here, right, this is from the World Population Review, you've grown by almost 10,000 people in 4 years. That's going to continue. Why? Because this is a wonderful city. It's a great place to live, a great place to raise your family. Even if you don't have a family, it's a great place to live. It's central, it's wonderful, it's fun. It's a cool, cool place to be. But we also have more and more students moving here. The enrollment at ASU continues to grow. Those students need a place to live. So do they add to the housing crisis we have today? I mean, there was a discussion in the previous case about affordable housing. We need affordable housing. One of the reasons we don't have affordable housing is simply because 3 students, right, paying $1,200 a month each can pay more than a family can to rent a single-family home in the city of Tempe. So the idea of taking these kids, or at least giving them an opportunity to move out of residential neighborhoods and into a place like I'm going to show you today, is critically important as part of, hopefully, a solution to housing. My client also, I mean, obviously you're not going to have affordable housing in a student housing building, but my client with this project is willing to commit $1 million to the Affordable Housing Fund, right, in order to assist with that. But we have ASU continuing to grow. This number, this population number you see there, I don't know how much of that actually represents students. I mean, when the census takers went around in 2000 and 2020 and then went around, you know, the census now, I have no idea what that mix is. That number may be even more. We don't know. So I factor in, again, these things that continue to change. Another factor is there's a policy that's been adopted by the city of Tempe City Council. And this policy has been in place for some time. And I've heard it every time I've spoken with the mayor, every time I've spoken to the council members, both current and past. And that is, we don't want student housing in downtown Tempe. Okay. They will not approve student housing in downtown Tempe. Now, we know that there's been some student housing developers who kind of haven't been forthcoming necessarily with what they plan to do with their high-rise buildings, but the city says we don't want them there. We want the downtown Tempe to be market rate housing. We want to invite people, right, to live there, spend money there, and help it continue to become better and better and better as it has in the past. So where do they want the student housing? This triangle you see on your screen. This triangle, rural on the west, Terrace, which is the hypotenuse of the triangle, and then the southern part is Apache. And this is where we and other zoning attorneys have been placing student housing over the years. Beginning at my site, right there in the southwest corner, you cross the street. You have the district, right? We did that there. It's right here connected to the triangle. The Marshall, right? Now, the Hugo is an old apartment building, but then you've got Park Place and you've got Nexa, student housing projects. You go across the street. I did Apollo. You just approved 1020 Apache at 15 stories. You approved the Carmen, right, which was actually the rise that I did, you know, back in 2017. You go along Terrace, right? You just approved where University Valley 4 stories is. You just recommended approval for student housing there. I was able to do the Canvas project that you see there. And you've got the Vertex. So basically, in this triangular area, right, on either side of the streets, this is where the city council has stated, it's an unwritten policy, this is where we want the student housing to go. And as we bring more and more projects, we're using more and more available space. So that space continues to decline. And we have to work with it and we have to deal with it. Why is this such a great area? Because it's right across the street from the university. Number one. Number two, it's right on the light rail line, right there on Terrace. Number three, the streetcar is right there, right? It runs right along Apache, right in front of our place. And of course, the city has invested tens of millions of dollars in these alternate forms of transportation, both the light rail as well as the streetcar. So the idea is, since we have students who we don't want in their cars, right? We want them using alternative forms of transportation. We want them close to campus so they're not using their cars, so they're not bringing their cars necessarily to campus. We want them in this triangular area. And as I mentioned, we're running out of space. So my client took a look at this site, and in light of the things that I just shared with you, again, from an objective viewpoint, this site makes all the sense in the world for student housing. When you look at the site, right, as I mentioned, it's the old Vine, and then of course the Chevron station. There are unique constraints to development of this site, whether it's student housing, whether it's an apartment building, whether it's an office building, it doesn't matter. There's certain constraints. One is, it's the only property in this entire area that has streets on 3 sides. Apache Boulevard on the north, Rural on the east, and Sunset Drive on the west. This is also an intersection of 2 major arterials, right? 2 major arterials, which of course creates other challenges. For example, along the east side of the property, right, along Rural Road, there's a 69 kV power line. That power line is not going anywhere. That power line is there to stay. You can't put it underground because you have to vault it and everything else. In addition, we need to have a bus stop. In addition, we need to make basically a dedication of right-of-way and build the bus stop. In addition, when you look at Apache Boulevard and where traffic goes now, we have a traffic engineer. It's unsafe. You can see a car right there just leaving, right, going to north onto Apache Boulevard. Where's it going to go? If it doesn't turn right, it's going to cross a bike lane, which is not safe usually, and it's going to try and get over into that middle lane. And I've seen them because I've gone out here and just sat and watched it. They actually cross the railroad tracks, I mean these train tracks for the streetcar to go into that left turn lane. And it happens not only there, but it used to happen when the Vine was open as well. So as we design our project, we get rid of all access on the Apache, right? That goes away. Because we have 3 streets, and again, I'll show you. You go down all of these properties, right? From across the street where the CVS is, the District, the Marshall, the Yugo, Park Place, Nexa. You go north, Apollo, Apache, Carmen. You go up, Terrace, University, Regency Park, Vertex. None of them has 3 streets on 3 or 4 sides of the property. Not only is it important for traffic circulation, but it's expensive to create sidewalks and landscaping and all the things that you have to have streetscape-wise in the city of Tempe. And your staff does a great job of reminding us, gently but forcefully, that you need to make that realm, that pedestrian realm, inviting, comfortable, with shade, and you have to activate it. Well, we have to do it 3 times. Not like many of the other ones, it's just once. And we also have to do it with 69 kV lines over there. We had to move our building back almost 30 feet from the curb in order to accommodate the fact that we have these 69 kV lines there. And then even worse, underneath, there's these irrigation lines and easements and other things. We couldn't even plant trees there because of this impediment that's there. So we had to move everything back and design around it. And then we had to design about where our back of house is going to be, where the traffic's going to go. How do we do it safely? How do we do it in a way that makes sense? And then how do we design a building around it? This is what I call a hard corner. There aren't a lot of hard corners here, right? In fact, we're it. There's a hard corner across the street. I'm bringing a project to you in a few months on that one, but where the CVS is right now, CVS is not going away, but so this is really the only hard corner that you see here. Hard corners are supposed to be statement corners. The reason is they're hard corners is you have 2 major arterials that intersect here. That's where, under basic principles of development and planning, right, this is where you make a statement corner. And following into your general plan, there's many examples of why that is recognized as such. So we have this, and we have a lot of challenges in design, especially because of all of the impediments that we have with respect to design. But we spent a lot of time and a lot of effort doing it. Now, as I said, I've been doing this over 40 years, going on 45. I have done hundreds of multifamily projects. I've done hundreds, probably 100 or more high-rise buildings. And no matter how tall or how short, when you have multifamily, I hear 4 things. too tall, too dense, too much traffic, and crime. Okay? We hear it all the time. That's the subjective part of it. Those fears are legitimate. Okay? Those concerns by neighbors and neighborhood groups are legitimate concerns. Crime, for example, right? So here, we asked the Tempe Police Department for an incident report, basically covering 15 months. This is just at the Chevron station. There was 63 calls for service between January 1st of 2022 and April 3rd, 2024. Incidents such as theft, fraud, assault, disorderly conduct, trespass, fight, family fight, shoplifting, burglary, disturbing, harassing. It's not a surprise. That happens often when you have gas stations and they sell goods and all kinds of other things. But is there going to be crime with this project? And the answer is no. You don't have calls for service like this. Landmark has been doing this for over 20 years. We will have a security plan in place with the city of Tempe. We have a management plan that we've run by, again, Dr. Vogel, and they're very supportive of it. We have a relationship. We have security. So the likelihood of crime here really is very little. The second issue really is too dense, too much traffic. What I've learned over the years is density is more of a state of mind, right? Because what does density mean? If you have 100 people, right, living in a building, or you have 500 people living in a building, them living there doesn't make much of a difference. But where they do make a difference is traffic. When you have 500 people living in a building and each one has a car, you've got a lot of traffic. If you've got 100 people living in a building and everybody has a car, you have much less traffic. That's the great thing about student housing, right? We have a parking ratio of I think it's 3.3. I've got the number, I'll show you in a minute. Whereas if this was all residents, right, and market rate apartments, it's a lot of traffic. So our traffic engineer, again, using the standards they use for traffic engineering, which I know nothing about, you can see the vehicle generated from our proposed development, as what I'm going to present it tonight. 1,046 daily trips total from this building. AM peak hours and PM peak hours are usually the times when everyone's really mostly concerned about the volume of traffic. So entering at about 16 coming in, 76 going out, PM 64 coming in, 37 leaving. So you got a total of 92 trips in the morning and 101 in the afternoon. With the existing uses, now obviously we know the Vine is closed, but had the Vine been operating, which it had been for decades, that total is 2,316 trips, if it's the same commercial uses that remain there today. That means we're going to generate 1,270 fewer trips total, fewer trips in the morning, fewer trips at night. Height. That's really the underlying issue, I think, before you tonight, is building height. I've learned over all of my years that there are certain hard rules of engagement when it comes to building height, right? When I have a client that comes in and they say, Nick, I want to build a tall building, I go, okay. Now we know that building high rises is not for the faint of heart. It's extremely expensive, right? When you build a stick-built building, like the one that you just saw before now and the one that you approved earlier, the cost per square foot is probably a third of what it costs to build a tall building for a whole host of reasons, right? Just the materials themselves, but also the time it takes and the cost, and there's a whole number of things. So basically, great, you want to build a tall building. Rule number one, you do not build a tall building next to single-family home subdivisions. You do not build a tall building even in close proximity to a single-family home subdivision. And it's not because it's a tall building, it's because of privacy. I do these buildings all over the city. And we will build close to basically single-family home subdivisions. They won't be high-rises. They'll step down as they get close. But you see in an aerial, they have swimming pools in their backyards. I guarantee you, every one of those has a 16-year-old daughter, and no one wants anybody gawking at them from a tall building. No one wants them looking in their windows, in their bedroom windows, in their living room windows. They want privacy. Rule number one, you don't build tall buildings next to or in close proximity to single-family home subdivisions because of privacy. So when I looked at this site, we did measurements. From Hudson Manor, which is where Phil Amorosi lives, we are half a mile away. From University Park, which is where Paul Kent lives, we're 1,050 feet away to the nearest single-family home. That's almost a quarter of a mile. South to University Heights, another single-family home subdivision, we are 1,190 feet, which is exactly a quarter of a mile. We don't have any single-family homes anywhere near us. So to me, rule number one was easily fulfilled and complied with. This is a view of what it would look like. We have some very good architects who do great things with computers. I could never do this. But you can see where someone's standing along Apache, kind of next to, right, the apartment buildings that are actually separate Apache from the single-family home subdivision. That's what you see. No one in those buildings are going to be looking in anybody's backyards, in their windows, anything, and that's the nearest area where there is single-family home subdivision. Next, general plan, and we're going to talk about the general plan today. When we started this case, right, last summer, the general plan that we were dealing with was the 2040 plan. We were late to the party because so much had already been done, right, with outreach and other things, but we still were only dealing with that. And we actually started filing our things back in September, and I'll show you some of the schedules for that. But at the end of the day, I looked at both the 2040 plan and then ultimately the 2050 plan. But our applications were under the 2040 plan. Now, I had every hope that the 2050 plan would be approved on the ballot in March. As you remember, I have personal experience in what happens when things go on the ballot, and the same opposition group to my other project, right, won. And that same group was opposing this. So thank goodness that this general plan was approved. But we had our concerns, but it didn't matter. We had to deal with what we had to deal with, what was the law and the rules at the time. Character maps. All of the tall buildings in the city of Tempe are located in the orange. That's the Rio Salado, downtown, ASU, Northwest neighborhoods. All the tall buildings are there. That stars where we are. So obviously, if you're going to have tall buildings, they should be there, and frankly, they are. As I mentioned, I did the Rise, which is 15 stories tall. I didn't do, right, the 922 building, which is called the View at one time. But at one time, that was the tallest building north of or outside of downtown Tempe at 10 stories. It sat there all by itself, tall building. A lot of anxiety went into that project. I didn't do it, but somebody else did, and that was back in 2009. So I look at the condition today, right? It's awful. As you can see, there's zero shade anywhere near, unless there's a little tree there, I guess, right at the corner. But it's a bus stop. See those 69 kV lines? We can't bury those. We can't get rid of them. They're an impediment to our development. Plus, we have to build a bus turnout and a bus shelter and get that done. Plus, we have to provide an 8-foot sidewalk, okay? Not a small sidewalk, an 8-foot sidewalk on Apache and on Rural. So we have to design around all of this. And by the way, the sidewalks are detached sidewalks. There's actually landscaping that goes along the curbs. And this is, of course, looking to the east from the old Vine. You can see where the old view, the 922 is, and then you can see where the district is that I did across the street. So one of the things that I do is this going to be a standalone tall building all by itself in the entire area? And the answer is no. As I mentioned, 922 Place is 10 stories, this catty corner from us, this one property removed from the corner. At the time it was built, it was just 10 stories. It was going to be a condo project. Some of you may remember that. But then the recession happened. So they turned it into a student housing project. But it was 10 stories. It was the tallest building around. And there was anxiety from everybody when that was built. And it stood there all by itself at 10 stories. Then I came along with the Rise. More anxiety, more angst. Those are larger parcels. They're larger buildings. The Rise, as you can kind of see, it's an L shape. It's massive. It goes around and actually loops around, basically two sides of a rectangle around 922 Place. And then, all of a sudden, well, 150 feet, 170 feet, 15 stories isn't so bad anymore. So 1020 Apache came along at 15 stories. Our building's at 20 stories. So we started with 922 Place at 10. I came along and built one 5 stories taller. And now on a hard corner, where you're supposed to put these things under general planning principles, we're talking about another 5 stories with respect to our application. But there's reasons for that. Part of it is, again, the design constraints on the corner. Our building, like I said, is almost 30 feet back from the curb. We have a 17-foot setback from the property line, right? So all of those things, when you start skinning down the area, when you have on Sunset, you've got streetscape and setbacks. On Apache, you've got streetscape and setbacks. Same thing on rural. You start pushing it this way. It's like a balloon. You push it this way, it's going to go up. It's not because necessarily they want to have a tall building. It's the only thing that works. But because it's a hard corner, it has to be special. It can't be a run-of-the-mill, high-rise building. People look at it and go, eh. It's got to be special. It has to have a presence to it. So we hired a tremendous architect who's here and answered any questions to start going through design. Now, these dates, there's 9 of them. These are the dates that our architectural design, civil engineering, landscape architects, everybody met with staff, right? We sat down with staff and rolled up our sleeves. They didn't tell us what to do, but they told us what's not acceptable in the city of Tempe. And because the standard for this building has to be so high, the bar has to be set so high, right? They went through iteration after iteration after iteration after iteration and came up with, now here's the one subjective thing I'm going to say. I love the look of this building. Now, understand, I have no taste. My wife buys my clothes. If I dress myself, I would look anyway. I draw stick people. So when I see something that I like, it's personal to me. I grew up in Milwaukee, so maybe that has a lot to do with it, but I just love the way this building turned out. The first iteration, I didn't even like it. So here are comments that are in your staff report from staff regarding the design. The use of louvered, corrugated, perforated metal panels in a complement of cool and warm colors, and the use of a textured insulated panel with reflective metallic surface provides newer materials that complement the more traditional materials such as brick and glazing. The plans provide dimensional shifts in the wall plane. from as little as 2 inches to 23 feet. I don't know what that means, but it looks awesome, right? On any one elevation, it's all over the place. The larger massing is broken down by changes in material or color or a combination of texture and color, utilizing natural light to create surface change in the depth of recessed and projected elements, which will create a sense of movement based on the time of day. When you look at this building at different times of day, it's going to look different. I haven't seen anything like that in Tempe or Phoenix or anywhere, to be honest with you. The base is grounded in a darker masonry form, highlighted with a copper wrap and a canopy to highlight the first floor and varied heights to break the ceiling experience at the pedestrian level. I don't know what that is either, but it sounds really cool. But you will see it, right, when I show it to you. As demonstrated in the elevations and renderings, the design provides significant architectural detail, exceeding, this is where I mentioned, it has to be the best of the best, exceeding any of the surrounding structures or student housing developments, any of them. Use of recessed windows with ribbed paneling and tapered shade fins create rhythm that's broken by the masonry and perforated metal panel sections of the structure, providing a grounded stability and light porosity to the form. This building is awesome. The design is awesome. The height works for all the reasons that I shared with you. So here's an example. Here's the site plan. We have almost 5,000 square feet of retail. That's a lot. Most of the other student housing projects that I've brought to you don't have anywhere near that. The last one had homework units and no retail. But this one has, in those 3 square areas along Apache, that's retail. And what you see out there, right, again, we had to move the building back to do this, but what you see is all outdoor dining. You see all that cool landscaping, and then all those little dots and stuff and white things, those are tables and chairs and there's shade. On the corner, right, we have outdoor dining as well. Look at all the pavers. There's no solid concrete around it. How about having sidewalks with pavers? How about having a corner with pavers? How about all of our corners, right, with pavers? Look at the landscaping on all 3 sides. It's thick, it's generous, and it's set back. This building doesn't crowd the street like all the other high-rise buildings do, even those in downtown Tempe. They're all, man, they take urban design to the nth degree. Well, here we're taking a little bit of suburban design and putting it into a high-rise building. And so if you look along rural, right, you see that gray little triangle, a rectangle, it's number 21. That's basically a bus shelter. So people don't have to stand out in the heat. And then again, we have an 8-foot sidewalk. It's all with pavers. We have a right-in, right-out entrance into the garage using one curb cut that's there today. But you see the landscaping again, we have to go around on Sunset and do the same landscaping. The main entrance is off of Sunset. That creates a very safe way for circulation and traffic movements from the site. Excuse me. The main entry into the lobby is at the intersection of Sunset and Apache Boulevard. Excuse me one minute. My allergies have been killing me, so.
I want to just mention, I appreciate all the detail. I'm wondering if you can make it a little bit more concise for us.
I will.
I would appreciate that.
I apologize. I will move this along quickly. But even the detail around the exterior with the 8-foot tall walls, right, and the screening, out of respect for all the other property owners around us, this design works functionally. We have 2 levels of underground parking. There are no student housing projects in Arizona that have 2 levels of underground parking. Certainly not in Tempe. And then we have 5 levels above that. Again, because the building had to go this way, we have to do that. But the best part is you don't see garage. We've wrapped the parking garage with units. Never been done before. So we have a 1 acre site. We're looking at 245 feet. We have a 20 and a 21 story element. This thing is broken up into different elements. 363 dwelling units, 946 bedrooms. The Apollo, for example, has about 960 bedrooms, as does the Rise, right? This has 946. Again, we have a much thinner, skinnier building, so we don't have as many people as we otherwise would, even though it's a taller building. 23 studios. There's not a lot of student housing projects anymore that have 23 studios, right? Which is great. 89 one-bedrooms, 79 twos, 12 threes, and 164s. Again, we have 4,700 square feet of retail, and here's the setbacks, right? On Rural Road, it's 17 feet from the property line, but we have another 13 feet of public right-of-way. We're over 30 feet away from the curb. Parking spaces, 359, so we're at 0.35 per bed. And then we have 390 bike spaces, and of course, they're locked up spaces in the parking structure itself. Amenities, right? This is the 6th floor. These are where we have these step backs, this depth into the design, right? So you can see here we have landscape areas. This is more of a passive area for students to be. Then we go to the rooftop, right? And again, we have a clubhouse, we have a fitness center, we have a pool, we have all kinds of stuff that I never had in college, and I'm envious as all get out. But that's what's there today for kids. But again, the idea is to make them happy, to love living here, not to live in some single-family home in the neighborhoods that are away from us. This is some of the stuff that I mentioned that I read from the staff report regarding the ground level design. How cool is this, right? You got all of this glass, it's all depth. This is the corner of Sunset and Apache. And you can see the different types of materials, and I think you have material boards here to take a look at. Look at the windows, right? And all of the things that they add there, the depth that they add there, the edges. There's no straight anything on this building. And this ground level area, I mean, who doesn't want to walk there, right? There's shade, there's depth. You have an 8-foot wide sidewalk. It's and even up in, and you can see in the upper left-hand corner where it goes depth and it goes deep. But we have sustainability features, National Green Building Standards, Energy Star appliances, LED lighting, programmable thermostats, no gas connections to dwelling units, EV charging. We're going to start with 4 stalls. We're going to have 5% of them are EV ready. And if we have to, we can either even retrofit those if we have a lot of students that basically have electric cars. And I think many of you know I drive a Tesla, so that's near and dear to my heart. Nighttime landscape watering, low flow toilets, faucets, kitchen, etc. But look at the ground level and look at that building. It's absolutely stunning. These are material board. Like I said, I think you've got the hard ones here. These are all high-grade, high-end quality materials, from metal, right, to the granite, to cut for the perforated metal corrugated, and then the brick and mortar. I've worked on a lot of things in my time. So again, conceptual window, shade and material, depth, detail. These are the things that staff was writing about regarding the design of this building. There's not another building in Tempe that is designed to be built with this level of detail and these architectural elements. There's a lot of them that are cool, glass, right, up and down, office buildings mostly. Some of the high rises maybe along Tempe Town Lake, but this is awesome. Vertical channel again. So this is where we've gotten to, and that is a design with lots of movement, lots of depth, great materials, great colors, and it's on that corner right? Which again is making a statement. But you can see that there's nothing that's just one straight long wall. It moves, it's depth, it's deep. You can see the corner itself, which is here. You can see where the outdoor dining is. You can see how far back we've had to push this building along, especially along rural. There's going to be the bus stop and the bus shelter. You can see the 8-foot sidewalks. And again, you can see all of those units that you see there, those aren't fake units. I've had clients that have parking structures above grade and they wrap them with fake windows. These are units. They're real live units, right? So that you don't see a parking structure. 2 down, basically 5 up. We have to, by the way, relocate even the signal that you see there with the Apache Boulevard name on it. We have to relocate that, again, because of the challenges we have. But look at the landscaping, right? Look at the shade, look at all the things that this developer is bringing to the table. But again, because we had to move everything in, unfortunately had to go higher. Here's another shot, I think a little better shot of the entry into the student lobby. You can see again the landscaping up along Apache Boulevard and the trees. You can see, you know, the metal and all of the brick, and you know, each one of the individual windows and everything going up and down. It's just a great, great signature design for signature development. We asked for a use permit for tandem parking. Basically, we have 22 tandem parking spaces. We need a use permit for that. The way it works is we would lease them to 2 students that live in the same unit. So they would basically work together in case one of them parks, one of them has to move a car. But the idea is hopefully that they don't have to move their cars very often, but at least they're in the same unit. So here's our proposal for the zoning, right? Commercial shopping center and services, which is what it is now, and it's going to be MU4. This was the general plan when we started. You can see there, September 25th of last year is when we filed. And of course, we had a formal application in February and March. So of course, this is no longer necessary because you've already changed the general plan in 2050. And this was the application that we filed for the 65 dwelling units per acre and over. Now you can see that in last year, before March of this year, March 23rd, when the March 21st, when the general plan was approved, everything that was north of Apache, right, including the ASU property, was all 65 dwelling units per acre. You can see on the right-hand side, there's one darker spot that's south of Apache. I did that, and you recommended approval. That was for the Marshall, essentially. Again, it was a small building. Now, that building, they wanted to be taller, but the problem is there's condos behind them. So in our discussions with staff, going higher than 90 feet just didn't make any sense with condominiums that are just 20 feet off your property line. But we still had to change the density to the 65 or over. And of course, we have to do that for our own. The reason is simple. It's a 1 acre site. At less than 65 dwelling units per acre, which is what the designation was before and it still is today, we could only do, right, under R5, for example, we could only do 30 dwelling units, right? R5 is a maximum of 30 dwelling units per acre. If we did an MU4 PAD at less than 65 dwelling units, we could have 65 dwelling units because we're an acre, right? So how do you put 65 dwelling units on a 1 acre lot that has streets on 3 sides, that has 69 kV power lines along one side, where you have to move the building back 30 feet from the curb on one side, you have to move it back from Apache, you have to move it back from here. We had our architects trying to figure out, is there a way to build something on 1 acre with a MU4 PAD with density that's less than 65? And the answer is you can't. You can't park it. And then you have to have commercial besides. You can't even do a 4-story building because you don't have enough density to make it work. And you don't have a site large enough to make it work. So whether or not you are inclined tonight to support our request for a 21-story building, or if you're inclined to support the request of staff at 15 stories, or if you're inclined to support some of the suggestions from the neighbors at 10 stories, in any of those instances, we still have to change the general plan, right? Because you can't do any of that at less than 65 dwelling units per acre. Now, one of the things I want to point out is this is a hard corner. This is the 2050 plan. You have the green area, right, which is on the north side, which is basically the park area on the ASU land. But the rest of ASU coming off that corner is 65 and over. Same thing with the northeast corner. And now the southeast corner is all 65 and older, over. The southwest corner should be the same. It's the hard corner. 2 major arterials intersecting at that space. You don't want to have a little crappy 2-story building on it. It's a signature corner. So whether, like I said, you're inclined to support us at 2021 or staff's recommendation of 15 or even 10, whatever the number is, you can't do it without at least a recommendation to change the general plan. And frankly, it should happen. The reason is we're not near any single-family homes. I showed you, we're over a quarter of a mile away from the nearest one. Another reason why you should change this and allow for taller building is this 2050 element, land hubs. Land hubs are where you're supposed to have density. You're supposed to have intensity. You're supposed to have height. And you can see, and I wanted to show you 2 slides, one with that one along Apache, because it crosses rural. It includes us. Right there, see? Includes us. So we are part of the hub. So that general plan amendment should be changed at least to give us something rather than to be able to build nothing. Another is growth area and innovation hubs. This is the growth area. Again, the city has spent tens of millions of dollars on streetcars, on light rail, everything else. We're right there in that growth area and innovation hub. It should be 65 dwelling units or more. So with respect to stipulations, as usual, staff has done a wonderful job. We're happy with all the stipulations, save these 2. Again, they would like it to be 15 stories and a total of 165 feet. And of course, then the parking number 2 would work. So for example, if you're inclined tonight not to approve ours, but approve what staff is recommending, then you would keep that language in. But you would still have to make the change to the general plan, obviously, because it has to be 65 or older or over. Because as I mentioned, you can't build anything there 65 or less. There's no density that can work there just because of the small size of the site. You just can't do 65 units and do retail and do a bus turnout and do dedications and set everything back. It's just, we tried and tried just to give you an example, and we can't even do that. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I apologize for my long-winded presentation, but I wanted to kind of share with you from an objective standpoint how we got here tonight. It's been a long road, hence the long presentation. But again, my sincere apologies. I hope none of you are basketball or baseball fans, so I took you away from that. But so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Are there questions from the commission for the applicant?
Why did you buy this site? Why would this, if all these constraints are there, why in the heck would you buy this site without knowing that the general plan was going to be amended? Just a quick question for you. Why would you buy a 1-acre site? And if, you know, and I don't know what you paid for it. or your client paid for it, but it doesn't make any sense to me. You would even consider buying it, considering the other projects you've done, knowing where other developments have gone down Apache. So tell me, why would you spend that kind of money on this site?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Casano, you're spot on. My clients don't own it. They have it under contract. So they haven't purchased it yet. Their contract is contingent, obviously, of getting this done, but they've already invested hundreds of thousands of dollars just in the design that you see there to make it special. But you're spot on. We would never do that.
Other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, staff, please come up and provide us your presentation. I think we got through a lot of it.
Good
so-
evening. I'll try and talk fast. Diana Kaminsky, Senior Planner, Community Development Planning Division. As you know, this is a request for a general plan amendment to the density for a mixed-use high up to 65 dwelling units per acre to the mixed-use urban, which would be greater than 65 dwelling units per acre. The zoning map amendment from CSS Commercial Shopping and Service to mixed-use 4. The use permit to allow tandem parking, the development plan review for the site plan, landscape plan, and building elevations. They are requesting for 21 stories with 363 units on 1.04 acres, and the site, as we've gone over, is located there. And the general plan amendment, as was mentioned, and the calculations I did was based on the gross before they had to do their dedications of right-of-way. That's why the number is a little different than what was mentioned earlier. 70 dwelling units would be allowed under the current general plan designation. And in looking at this site, we did do our objective analysis of what we thought the area could hold, which is, I'll get into that a little bit more in the presentation. So this is showing the zoning map amendment and their planned area development. And their proposed density is 363 dwelling units per acre. And then they also have the number of bedrooms that go along with that, over 900 bedroom units. The number of recommended maximum density for staff is 235 dwelling units per acre. And where we got to that number was looking at that triangle, there's a little gnat around here. The triangle that was shown on slides 9 and 18 of the last presentation showed the character of the area just to the northeast of the site. And in looking at the character of what's happened recently, we've seen the developments moving towards 10 to 15 stories within that area. And looking at what's on ASU campus and the surrounding area, the 15-story mark really seemed to be more appropriate than their original proposal, which was 23, and then their reduction to 21 stories. So what we did is we looked at that 15-story project and literally went floor by floor on everything above 15 and counted the number of units, and then subtracted that from the number of units they had, assuming that everything below the 15th level would remain the same. So that's how we came up with the height for recommendation of 165 feet. And the density just followed with what was left after we did the subtraction of units from their proposal. That does not take into account any reconfiguration of the unit types or the bedroom counts, but also we recognize that would affect their parking, could impact the ability to have a reduction in height with the reduction of the number of parking units by removing a floor or two of the above grade parking. Within the parking, they are asking for a small number of tandem units. This was a little bit unusual in having a student housing project where you would expect residents who are not relatives to possibly borrow keys to move cars around. But they would be within the same unit. Presumably they are trusting enough to have their roommate take their car and move it for them, or have some kind of arrangement of who goes in first and who gets to leave first. But it's a small number of units, and after looking at their plan for the site, we didn't see that this would be a significant impact to the project overall. So these are the criteria for the use permit for tandem parking. And there would be no conflict to the outside of the site or generation of traffic because it's all internal to the property. For the development plan review, as was mentioned earlier, the site did have a lot of challenges. With the 3 frontages There was limited opportunity for where they could put back-of-house uses. Originally, Sunset was kind of their back-of-house orientation, which we didn't like, having all the transformers and all of the uses that would be back-of-house along a street. Even though it's not their primary street, it is a street that a lot of pedestrians go through from the residences that live in that area off of Sunset. To the north, they have an underground irrigation line that has an easement, and to the east, they have the overhead power lines. And the dead end on the Sunset Drive was something that they weren't necessarily aware of, but our fire department said the problem we have is Sunset, and the way it's currently configured does not have sufficient room. There isn't a cul-de-sac turnaround or a hammerhead at the bottom. So one of the requests was actually that this development provide a safe place for fire to make turnarounds in the event that they needed to come down with large trucks. And so they did do that in the accommodation of their back of house, which is now on the south end of the site. Where the transformers are located, there is a gated turnaround that meets the fire truck requirements for being able to pull in and make a safe turn out, so they're not having to do a 4-point turn at the end of the street with a lot of pedestrians and bicyclists. And then the arterial street limitations and the configurations of the entry drive, they were limited on where they could put their drive entrances to the project because of the proximity to a very busy intersection. Some of the things they provided in working through all those challenges, as was mentioned earlier, we have sidewalk improvements on 3 street frontages with separated sidewalks and shade trees along all those sides. This took a lot of coordination in the types of species. On the north side, they're using mulgas with a root barrier because of the irrigation line. On the east, they're providing a cascalote, which has a smaller street tree, but we don't typically use small trees for shade trees. In this case, the overhead power lines were a dictating factor. And then on the west side, they are using a columnar form of live oak, which will provide more dense canopy of shade along the western side of the site. They've provided direct bike access from an internal storage room for bikes. So they have indoor shaded, secured bike parking that accesses to Sunset Drive rather than on the rural side. So the idea is to encourage all of the bike traffic on the lesser traveled street front that's a dead-end road, and the fire turnaround, as I mentioned earlier. For the elevations, this was a challenge. As was mentioned earlier, we had 9 meetings, predominantly talking about the site challenges and the design of the site. And the idea of lopping off the building to 15 stories didn't really make sense with the architecture that they were proposing. So what this red line reflects is actually a combination of changes to the height of the building, with the hard corner at Apache and Rural being 16 stories, and then dropping down to 15 and dropping down to 14 as you get closer to Sunset. So the condition is 15 floors, but the idea would be we would not want a hard line, that this would be something they would work within their architecture to provide some variation in that roof line and to maintain the quality of the project that they have presented. So we are recommending a maximum height of 165 feet, which would be 15 stories. And this is what it would look like on the east side. So this would be on the rural road side, again, stepping down from Apache, going back towards the south of the building. And then this is on the west side, on the Sunset side, which has the 2-story dorms to the west. And the lower portion of this that you see is the exposed garage on the upper levels, and that is a perforated metal panel system that they're using. So this lists some of the materials that they have, and they've already spoken to those, so I won't go into those details. So the red line on the south side is 14 stories, and that's, again, trying to step down towards the neighborhood to the south. And the resulting reduction in units and bedrooms would also, as I mentioned earlier, reduce the amount of parking necessary for the site. And the modifications to the elevations obviously would be necessary if we were to accommodate this change to the height for this recommendation. Tried to kind of draw a red line in, but I don't have graphic skills or software, but the idea being, again, that there would be some articulation of the roof line, not looking for a straight flat roof on this, and to maintain some of the projections and the character that they've created within the architecture itself. And they've presented the materials. There was a neighborhood meeting at the Moxie across the street. There were 2 members of the public that attended. We really didn't start getting a lot of comments in until the last week and a half. We did attend that meeting that they had. I have received 16 letters in opposition to the project, as well as a petition that was circulated from University Park Neighborhood Association with 27 individuals who signed. The public concerns include the building height and concern about density. Parking and traffic were mentioned, and a bigger concern, I think, for the precedence of this modifying the recent general plan to something that would now set precedence for future projects. So with that, I'll go to some acknowledgements that I'd like to make in recognizing the public concerns, that the proposed height, as they've shown it at 21 stories, is out of character with the surrounding area. We recognize the challenges that the general plan density as it currently is stated allows for this site. A general plan is general, which means they didn't take into consideration the specificity of the conditions of each individual site. And the feasibility of redevelopment of this site with the current general plan designation. Staff did work closely with the applicant and acknowledge the design enhancements that provide significant improvement as a gateway to the project at a prominent corner. And as a compromise to the requested PAD standards, staff is recommending a reduced height from 21 to 15 stories maximum, with a density and parking adjustments made based on the loss of the 6 levels. And the newer student housing developments to the east range from 10 to 15 stories, which is why objectively we felt this was an appropriate character for the area. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff? Commissioner Schwartz? Vice
Yes.
Chair Schwartz? Sorry.
So with those recommended changes, assuming this moves forward, would those be administratively worked through between your team and the developer? Or
I think that would be to your pleasure.
Okay.
Commissioner Lloyd?
On that note, did the applicant agree to those conditions of the?
No, in their presentation, they struck those conditions out.
And then in terms of the neighborhood input, was there support at any height in terms of the feedback that you got?
There was mention of 8 to 10 stories. Some people were, opposition to any height, but there was some flexibility in some of the comments we received. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so now we will open up the public comment period. If you are here to speak on this case, please find your way up to Joanna Berry and fill out one of these requests. I do have several in front of me. So again, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak. First up is Phil Amorosi. If you can approach and state your name, city of residence, and on deck would be Robert Miller.
Good evening, Commissioners. Phil Amorosi, 1432 East Cedar Street. I live right off Apache Boulevard, have been since 1985. I represented the DRC on the technical advisory group in the 2-year process for the 2050 plan, so I think I'm a little knowledgeable about this area. I'm here to tell you to vote against the amendment to change the 2050 general plan for the standard. And it's the first I'm hearing about a 15-story thing, but that's neither here nor there. This is not part of the downtown urban core. That should be in downtown. The demarcation line should be in downtown. South of Apache Boulevard should be the transition that goes to single-family, older, cultural resource neighborhoods. We shouldn't continue the 20-story and up projects to continue south. They're trying to compare this corner to the north side of Apache, but that's been student housing for over 50 years. And even the 15-story projects that were recently approved aren't 15 stories straight up. You can only see about 8 stories from the front, and they're larger in the back away from public view. And they talk about students increasing, but they give you this lump number for the ASU campus, and they don't break it down between what's really on campus, what's online, what are commuters. I think it's a far lower number than what they gave you in their presentation. They also talk about that the students will invigorate this area. Well, students don't have disposable income. We're already a low AMI area, average medium income. Students will not add to that. Banks see that that stays low, and that won't give us the retail that we need. We still can't get a supermarket on Apache because of these low numbers. Student housing does not help those numbers. They're even asking, that they said that it won't increase traffic, and they combined the gas station with the Vine, but I looked at the city's website from just last week, and their numbers say there's 29,000 day trips at that intersection. So adding 1,000 students, over 900 beds, to that intersection is not going to help the situation. It's not going to help the Apache corridor. There's no mention of sustainable construction. We're in an extreme environment. They say it's a great building. Where's the water harvesting? Where's the gray water usage? Where's the solar panels? They don't give us none of that, but they want 21 stories of density. I'm not against development, and I think Tempe is a vibrant, livable city, but let's keep what the voters wanted with their standards and not go with this standard. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next is Robert Miller. If you can approach and state your name again and city of residence, and then on deck would be Paul Kent.
Good evening again.
Evening.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Robert Miller, 5931 South Newberry Road in Tempe. I'm not going to wax lyrical about this, though I have lived in Tempe since 1976. And I actually did live in that little triangle when I was a student at ASU. So I'm kind of familiar with the area. I'm here to speak in opposition to this for one very simple reason. 2 months ago, we voted, 60% of us, to approve a general plan, and now we have an applicant who wants to amend that general plan to put up a building that is completely out of character with the area in question. It's a very bad precedent, and it's only going to make things worse. I don't think the council would like it. I don't think you should like it. And I really don't think the voters of this community are going to like it either. In addition to which, since it's too big for the area, and as Commissioner Casano correctly asked, why did you buy it? If you can't put something there that makes economic sense, why have you been trying and spending so much money to do so? I don't know. It's not my job to do so. That's for other people. But it is my suggestion that this project not be approved and that it go back to the drawing board, and maybe this little nice 1 acre site can be redeveloped into something else that actually works for the entire community there. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. All right, last up is Paul Kent. State your name and city of residence, please.
All right. Paul Kent, City of Tempe. Thank you, Chair, Commissioners. I've never been on this side before. So I support the 2050 plan. We just voted on it. And this site in the 2040 plan and the 2050 plan is the same density, up to 65 dwelling units per acre. So I feel that this is a location that we intended to leave the way it is in terms of its density. And I understand the project site is difficult, of course. So I don't need to talk about the 2050 plan and all the planning that went into it and all the commissions and all that stuff. But we just voted on it, as other people have said. I look at this as a step down area that we're moving south of Apache. I talk about my concerns are breaking the seal on height on the south side of Apache. The north side of Apache, I think we've already done that, and height there is probably appropriate. But on the south side of Apache, even though you recently approved something, the marshal, I think, had to do a general plan amendment, but it was only 6 or 7 stories high. There's nothing along Apache that's even higher than maybe 8 stories max. I think maybe the Graduate Hotel, which is a long ago Giplet legacy type of project. So this will be totally out of context in the area. And the other thing I would say is that there, in the general plan 2050, there's a revitalization and redevelopment area on the map, and this area is not in that section. So to me, this is not, the corner is tough. It is a tough corner. I'd love to see a development there of some sort. Again, not against development, typically not against height, things like that. So I would urge denial of the general plan amendment. The concern that I have is the staff recommendation of 15, or even the rumors of 10 or 8. You're changing the project so dramatically that, to me, it's a different project. And so what I'm saying is no general plan amendment for this project. If in the future a different project comes along, that stands on its own. Me personally, I think the design is nice. It would fit in other parts of Tempe, downtown, even though some people say that students shouldn't live downtown. I think they do live downtown. So I appreciate Landmark's willingness to invest the money in Tempe, and hopefully they can build it somewhere, but I would urge you to deny the general plan amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, was there anyone else in the audience wishing to speak on this item tonight? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to invite the applicant back up to briefly address the public comments.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, and I used the term not just humility, but respect, right? Respect for the system, respect for the city, respect for the neighborhoods, respect for staff and everybody. If Landmark came to me on March 25th and said, Nick, we want to basically build this building on this site, I would have said no. And I would have said no because the general plan has just been adopted by the voters, and it's too soon to make any changes. But that's not what happened. What happened was last summer, we looked at a plan. If I could have my presentation back up, please. We had a general plan that was a 2040 plan, and that was the rule, that was the law. Now, every general plan has a provision that says it's amendable, right? Minor amendments, major amendments, they're all defined. But at the end of the day, right, the idea that you have amendments is because you amend it on a case-by-case basis. Well, we had a 2040 plan. And the 2040 plan, like I said, we started last summer. We filed our things last September. That 2050 plan was working its way through, getting ready to go to an election in March. But who knew if it was going to be approved? 10 years ago, Scottdale had a general plan that was basically voted down by the voters. And again, the opposition to this general plan was the same people who defeated another ballot measure that I was very much hoping would get approved. But that's neither here nor there. What's neither here nor there is you don't stop all development because sometime in the next 8 to 10 months, there may be a change in the general plan. You can't control change. You can't manage it, right? All you can do is evolve and adapt to it. Well, we had a 2040 plan. That was the rule. We saw a piece of property that was under contract. The clients don't own it. But that piece of property has all kinds of challenges to it. It can't be developed, right, with any amount of residential density under its existing condition under the 2040 plan or the 2050 plan. For example, I mean, if we can go back. Okay. As I mentioned, you can see along a rural road how far back that building has to be. Okay? You see along Apache how far back that building has to be. You see along Sunset that we had to put a turnout for fire because Sunset is a dead end. You put any residential, new residential on this street, fire has to be able to go in and turn around. Fire doesn't back up. So we had to put that in. If you do an MU4, you have to have mixed use. Where's the commercial going to go? The bottom line is, with the existing general plan and the one we were working with, which is 2040, at 1.8 acres, you could squeeze in 70 dwelling units on paper, but you can't do it in reality because you're this way, and then you have to park it, and then you have to provide that extra space at the bottom for fire. There's no room to make it work. You have to design actual units, right, with hallways and all the other things that go in it. It doesn't work. I understand that you don't change general plans in a vacuum. It should never be done in a vacuum. Right? I talked to folks here about, maybe getting involved before the election, right? About talking about general plans, and the answer was no, bring a project, right? So we're bringing a project, right? And we started bringing the project last summer, and we end up working, as I said, with staff. This is a very special project, and it's a very special corner. And it's a corner on two major arterials. It would be a violation of every general planning concept, right? To leave it as it is, or to say, sorry, even though you can't build on it, we're going to leave it as it is anyway, because someone doesn't want to change the general plan. And I hear the term precedent, okay? I apologize, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have to put my professor hat on. I teach at ASU Law School, and I taught at Marquette Law School before I moved here in '85. Precedent is a term in the law. It's in the judicial area. And that is, if a Supreme Court or a court of competent jurisdiction establishes settled law, that's precedent. That means if a judge, right, in a lower court has something that's similar, the judge can't willy-nilly, he or she, just change it. It's precedent. You have to comply with it. Even Supreme Courts, state and federal, are sometimes reluctant to change the law. Precedent doesn't apply in a legislative body. Just because one building goes up doesn't mean everybody gets to have the same height. And it's especially poignant here because when you look at our site, where's height going to go? North of us, it's all ASU. West of us, it's all ASU all the way down to Paul Kent's neighborhood, which is a quarter-mile away. South of us, it's all ASU. ASU doesn't need your permission to build anything, right? I mean, so the idea that somehow if you build this here, right, that somehow now there's going to be a slew of buildings going south and north, it's all ASU land. There's no place to go. But even if it wasn't, okay, it still doesn't mean you get a right to build it. And a perfect example is what we did with the Marshall. They wanted to build 15 stories on it, but it was too close to a condominium project behind it. So it went down. They could have said, precedent. You got 15 stories across the street, we should have 15 stories. It doesn't work that way. That's what I mean about the subjective versus the objective. This is a right location, great site. We've worked very, very hard to get here. Basically, to throw it all in the gutter would be a terrible thing to happen. But thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I apologize for the long time.
Are there questions for the applicant? I have a question. If this one is approved with conditions as written, will you move forward with that project?
We struggle with the 15-story convention simply because of all of the things we have to do that's very expensive. Everything that I just described to you, plus the demolition, plus dealing with whatever's underneath the ground, underneath the gas station. So I can't tell you that we would be okay with staff's recommendation, but we appreciate their effort very, very much. And really, it's going to be up to the city council which way they're going to go. But they rely very much upon you. So that's why I mentioned if your inclination is to approve us, wonderful, then we would ask that those two stipulations be removed. If you're going to instead inclined to do what staff is recommending, then obviously those stipulations would remain.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would staff like to address any other items? No? Okay, thank you. All right, with that, we can close out the public comment period, and I'd like to hear from the commission on this one. Commissioner Tom.
I'm struggling with this one, right? Because we have ASU ownership west and south, and then we have this kind of little private ownership of this property, of these properties here. And if we were to approve this at the corner, what is to happen to the remaining private ownership properties? Is there enough property to essentially develop, or redevelop that site? If we were to approve the staff recommendation, I have some hesitancy there because it's essentially we're cutting the project in half, right? Is it something that we would want to move forward with, or the applicant would want to move forward with? It's a unique situation. The general plan is a general plan. It doesn't always fit every site. When I was in Phoenix, we had similar situations where we had a major general plan amendment or approved planning, and then we had to come back in and adjust it on smaller sites, or once we got into the minutia of the project. This one's unique. I maybe have a question for staff or maybe the applicant. In ASU's master plan, do they have this in their master plan, in their master plan area? I don't know if that was a question or if that came up or if ASU even made comments.
No.
I don't
think there's an answer for you. Sorry.
So I'm struggling with this one a little bit because I understand that we have some very unique constraints on this property. And if we were to add more acreage, I think it makes the development more viable, or more, I guess viable is the right word for us to look at that project. It's just, man, there's so many constraints on it. It's not normal. And I understand where the applicant is wanting additional height. I understand where staff's at wanting the lower height. And then I have some concerns with, if we were to approve this, what happens to the remaining private property that sits there? How does that get developed?
Thank you. Commissioner Lloyd?
Thank you, Chair. I'll try to be succinct here. So I understand that general plans are meant to be amended on a case-by-case basis. To me, it really does not matter whether we just voted on the 2050 or if we were still operating under the 2040. I would not support an amendment for this drastic of a density change. So I appreciate staff's attempt to try to moderate it. But I think where we're at in terms of where the applicant, what they've stated in terms of that condition, it's unlikely that I'll support approval.
Commissioner Spears.
It sounds like the land is too small for the building. Great building, it doesn't belong here. The other 3 quarters are open space and 1-story retail operations. ASU's properties, none of them that are in the vicinity come close to being this height. I do think the voters have just approved the general plan, and I don't think this warrants an amendment. And frankly, I would say I'm a little insulted that you're saying general plan amendment, as the general plan was not supported by the same people that are opposing this, and I know that for a fact that's not true. I don't think it's a good project. Maybe someplace else, not on this corner.
Any other comments? Commissioner Casano.
I echo those last 2 comments.
Okay. I guess I'll just agree with Commissioner Casano. Can we have a motion on this one? Unless anyone else wishes to speak? Okay. Commissioner Spears?
I move to deny repeal number, the standard 240060.
Okay, the motion is on the table for denial. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Casano. All those in support of the denial, please raise your hand. And opposed? So are you abstaining or? Okay, so 1 vote in. Oh, vote for. Okay, so that is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so that passes unanimously. Commission member announcements. Commissioner Forte.
There's a Keep Tempe Beautiful event at Tempe Town Lake that's going to be in conjunction with Breakfast with Burdetta this Saturday from 8 to 11. Love to see everyone there.
Great. Any others? Staff announcements.
We have no announcements this evening, Mr. Chair.
All right. All right. Then, do we need a motion? I can't remember. Did we do that?
I motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Is there a second? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Raise your hand. Thank you. All right. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Have a good evening.